Okay, I'm live. I invited a couple people. We'll see if they show up. Right now, I'm just chilling on a Sunday night watching Zulu, 1964, Michael Caine. Does anyone see that movie? It's pretty damn good. Um, anyway, wondering who pops in. I invited a few people, but hold on a second. Matt is, let me see. Okay, Chris is going to jump in, but he's walking his dog. Matt's going to jump in later. I think he's masturbating, but that takes him some time because Viagra. I think it takes like 30 minutes to kick in. But anyway, he'll be here shortly. Anyway, so let's see what's going on in the world today. I think there's an election in Italy, which is going to piss off most of the EU members, which should be a lot of fun. Um, we'll see how that. Oh, by the way, anyone else is listening? Always a pleasure, Mister. Thank you, Nexus. Hope you're doing well, brother. What are you up to? Are you been watching the news, or have you just been chilling, or how do you spend your Sunday? We had a really great weather here in Seattle for early autumn. It was really nice. I think it was like 72 degrees. I went out and had a really nice walk. A beautiful Sunday. I had to run a bunch of errands this morning, and I had this nice early afternoon walk. Got some vitamin D. It was literally t-shirt and shorts weather. Very pleasant, and I've probably at the tail end of that. I don't know how many more of those we're going to get now because we are in fall. I think the first day of fall was the 20th or the 21st. I never can get that right. That's the equinox, correct? The fall equinox. Hold on a second. What did you say, Nexus? There. Okay. Had my grandkids all weekend. Hey, Nexus, how old are you, Nexus? You don't have grandkids, do you? Impressive if you did. Would you have them when you were like you had your first kid at 16? That's pretty cool. Yeah. Anyway, Armored Ghost is here. Okay, how you doing, Armored Ghost? I remember liquor stores stopped selling Russian vodka. That Russian vodka during the first weeks of the Ukraine hysteria. Have they stopped doing this? I don't know. I I mean that was just petty. I mean, I don't think that was really gonna. As far as exports go, everybody knows it's agricultural products, natural gas, oil, um, uh, fertilizer precursors. They even have rare earth minerals. Nexus, you're 55. Oh, props, brother. You're older than me, which looking good, brother. Looking good. Yeah, I don't think I don't know if that vodka thing is. I think that was like a virtue signaling thing. I mean, it's kind of silly. It's kind of funny because all the Greta Thunberg types, they're subtly silent because all of a sudden we have to burn all this coal to keep Europe from going in the dark. Uh, Beckloff continues to have hard-ons for Russian redhead. Yes, he does. I think I don't think it's that they're Russian. I just think you know what, Armored. I think if you put a wig on that had red hair, I think Beckloff would have a thing for you. And but then again, you are a very attractive man, so that's just Beckloff's style. And what's that expression? Don't kink shame. I mean, if that's your way, that's okay. I mean, that's whatever. If it works, it works. Not my scene, but I'm not going to judge. Especially nowadays because I get canceled right away. But what about you guys, Armored Skeptic? What have you been doing, and what are things like in your necks of the woods? Are there what's gas like where you are? Gas has been going up here for the last like 4 or 5 days. I know his gas has been inching up, which sucks. I don't like having to pay extra for that, and seems to spill over into everything else. But that's just the way of the world. Despite the fact that we have enough fuel that if we wanted to, we could be. I think we have more fuel. Like if you were to add up like natural gas, oil, coal. We have more energy reserves than like Saudi Arabia, but whatever. But to make the Greta Thunberg's types happy, we have got to do what we do. 345. That's not too bad actually. I mean, it probably sucks compared to what you used to, but 345 a gallon for gas. That's not that bad. I mean, compared to what it is here, where it's over $5 a gallon. Yeah, Seattle was televised as dying a couple of years ago. The bubonic plague fix that. I don't know. It's on its way. It's think about Seattle. It's a very spread out place. There are parts of Seattle which I would say are dead instead of dying, like the downtown area. Like there's no 20. The thing about Seattle, there's no 24-hour stores anymore. Like one of the cool things about when I moved here was there was all these grocery stores because I like to do my shopping like really off hours, so I don't have to wait in fucking lines. All those 24-hour stores are gone because people would just come in and just rob the places blind. So like in the downtown area, which I don't live in, that was just horrific. Hold on a second. Someone else is joining us. Oh, Chris is here. Hold on a second. Let me invite him in. Chris, is that?
How's it going?
Okay, yeah, I heard you were masturbating.
Well, I mean, usually, yeah.
Okay, that's all right. Yeah, I heard that. Well, I heard
it at least once a day since I was 11.
At least one day. Well, what do you always say, Chris? You have to get the poison out, right?
Yeah, exactly. I don't know how you're supposed to think clearly otherwise.
Fair enough. It's like. But what's this thing? Someone in the chat mentioned that you have a fetish for Russian redheads. I said it wasn't Russian redheads. I just thought it was. I said if you put a redheaded wig on pretty much a guy, that would get you dick hard.
I mean, I don't know about a guy. If anything, ginger dudes are some of the goofiest motherfuckers in the world. But they just.
They have no soul.
I feel like if I did turn gay, my ginger fetish would go away in a heartbeat. but ginger girls they're just delightful.
Yeah, I will agree with that. There is, I don't know if this is like all gingers or just Irish gingers. And I grew up in my backstory. Irish gingers are, well, how do I say this politely? Are completely fucking psychotic.
Well, yeah, I mean, but women only come in two speeds, boring or crazy, and I just don't have the patience for boring. So,
yeah, well, but when I'm talking crazy, I mean like don't turn your back on them, and you got to hide where the scissors are.
Yeah, they'll do that.
Yeah, that's just my experience with the Irish redheads, and quite frankly, they're a little frightening, and I don't scare easy, but yeah, when it comes to when I'm naked and a girl has a pair of scissors, for some reason I haven't figured it out yet, I get very nervous.
Well, I mean, yeah, that's why I sleep on my stomach.
That's that's one way of protecting yourself. Yeah. But anyway, brother, how are you doing?
I'm all right. I just got off about like 2+ months of 10-hour days.
Oh yeah, could you explain to the novices in the audience, including myself, the difference between salaried employees and hourly employees?
Well, I mean, salary, yeah, you get you make a flat rate and you're there as much as they need you. Hourly, obviously, you're paid for your time. I remember when I was right out of high school, I'm working at Burger King, and I'm like the only one that's like, I'm the only person there that wasn't a complete fuck up. And I also worked nights. I was a closer, so the boss offered me, like I was there 3 months. He offered me like a
I think I remember this. Yeah.
And I'm like, well, what do you make? And he gives me like the yearly salary, you know what I mean? And I was like, yeah, but what do you make per hour? Because I'm like 18, 19 a year.
Right, because that's all you know is per hour.
I can't think in a year. Like, what? Who the hell knows what's going on a year from now? I need to know my paycheck for that. But no, he said, like, no salary. I didn't understand what salary even meant. I thought it was like another word for what you made. I thought it was a fancy word for what you made. You know what I mean? I didn't even know.
No, I remember when I was that age. Yeah, yeah.
And he's all like, no, I'm paid a flat rate regardless of how much I'm here. And I look at him like, you're here all the time.
You don't have a life.
Yeah, that sounds like I'm working like 30 hours and I don't even like that at that point. You know what I mean? I'm like, see, I didn't go to college right after high school because I was a directionless piece of shit. And all I wanted to do was read Spider-Man comics and fuck my girlfriend. It turns out you don't need a college degree for either one of those. Well, you don't even need a tremendous amount of money.
No, well, in fairness, Chris, I mean, myself at that age, that was pretty much my main ambition, but I still went to college. But, that's another story. I mean, I didn't really want to do any of that, but I was just like thinking.
Like, you got to go to college. I'm like, I didn't enjoy the 12 years of school I already did.
Yeah, no, because we were talking, we were having this funny conversation because you've been busted. I think you literally had 2 weeks of overtime straight, right? Like 10 days.
No, I had close to 2. I think it was a little over 2 months.
No shit.
I mean, I had weekends off mostly. I think there was like a couple Saturdays in there I worked. But most of the time I had weekends off, thank God. But it was 10-hour days throughout the week. And being second shift, they love jerking second shift people around because generally they didn't have people there during the weekend. They closed up at 11 on Friday nights. So I would work 3 p.m. to 1 a.m. And then Fridays, they'd be like, yeah, but come in early on Fridays, even though you stayed late the night before, because they just, so many of these places, they have no problem jerking second shift around.
Well, is this place, is this a 24? You said they just shut down flat at 11, or do they just keep going?
They generally don't have stuff going on during the weekends. Okay. Unless they really are behind, they bring people in, they force you to do the weekends, but generally,
do the machines have to get recalibrated on like some sort of schedule, or
they should? They don't do it as much as they don't. That's every place. Every place I've noticed in the last probably 10 years has gotten away from. You see, a lot of higher ups think if you can get away with like ignoring maintenance once, you can get away with doing it forever. That's how.
Yeah, until someone fucking blows up and they lose their hands. Yeah,
I remember I worked at a place called Donnelly, and when I started, this was probably like 05-ish. I started there, and I was only there for like 3 years because it was brutal overtime, even worse than what I do now. And I mean constant, not just like seasons of it. You know what I mean? It was just all the time. And they used to, like, when a job ran off on a line, they would do at least a shift worth of maintenance when I started there, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, they got away from that. And I mean, there were exceptions even then, like, if we're really, really behind and it's got to go on, whatever. But they got away from that. They were like, oh, we don't have to do that. And, like 6 months later, shit's just breaking all over the fucking place.
Yeah, well, because the managers, the quote unquote salary people, are just thinking about their numbers, right? So they're just like work it until something gives,
Well, that's the thing. You get these guys that, they've never done the job. You know what I mean? They don't know, we always joke about that. It's like, oh, what do we know? We're just the people that run the machines. Better to have somebody that sits in an air-conditioned office all day that's never held a wrench tell us how this works.
Oh, could you tell the story about the porta potty?
Oh, this was the last.
Set it up. So
I was working at a foundry, and we had my direct boss was fine, but the plant supervisor, I guess he was a shithead. And every interaction I had with him in the 2 or 3 years I worked there was nightmarish. But he was just getting, this was right after the pandemic hit. And like we were off for a week and then we got the fuck back to work. You know what I mean? Because we were considered essential.
Essential workers, yeah. Those boxes. You got to make those boxes.
Well, this was a foundry and we were making metal pieces, so fine. But we lost a lot of people in that. A lot of people took a layoff. A lot of people didn't want to come back, whatever. We lost a lot of people, and then it got into a spiral, as some of these places do, where you dump more work on people, so more people leave. So you dump even more.
Yeah, they're overwhelmed, and yeah.
Well, anyways, this guy was such a shithead. And at one point, he calls a meeting, and he loved to swing his dick around. One of these guys, you know what I mean? He loved the power he had, which is just the worst kind of fucking boss. So he has a meeting, and he talks about in the men's room, somebody had put some graffiti on the wall. Like that was fucking new. And that bathroom we had looked like you could film a Saw sequel in it. And he's all like, if this happens again, I'm going to put out porta potties and you'll all use those. And we're in the middle of a meeting and I blurted out. And I mean, this pissed him off, but I didn't care. I just blurted out, I will quit. Right. He's like, excuse me? He's like, no. It's because it was like the middle of winter too. I'm like, I'm not going to go out in the yard like a dog because somebody drew a penis on the wall in the bathroom. I'm not going to do that. Those are my exact words too in the middle of a meeting.
You know what I say when I get in situations when someone says, when I say something that people think is off color and they say, excuse me, I say, no, I don't think I will.
Yeah. I finally told that guy to fuck off at one point after a while being there. I remember the place I worked at was right near the fucking break room. And honest to God, I chose that department because of that. I had no idea what any of these things done. I had never worked in a foundry. And they're like, which department do you want? I'm like, I don't know. That one's right by the break room. That's convenient. I don't know. You know what I mean? But my machine is literally probably as far away from the break room door as like the end of you are from the other end of your living room. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So at one point, and I mean, remember, I'm working stupid overtime. I just like, stop my machine for a second. I'm like, I need a fucking soda. So I walk into the break room. Now, in the break room was the only place in that fucking building where I had reception on my phone.
Oh, I think I know this. Keep going.
So as I'm standing there, putting my fucking dollar in to get a soda or swipe my card, whatever, my phone just bing, 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 bing with, an hour's worth of fucking messages that, So, just instinctively, I pull my phone out. I'm looking at it, as I'm getting my soda, and I walk back. Now, again, been there like 3 years. Never had I been bitched at for being on my phone because it wasn't even an option for me. Dead reception everywhere but that break room and spotty reception in there. So he comes out and starts drags me in front of my supervisor and starts chewing me about like going in the break room to look at my phone. And he's like, you shouldn't even be going in there for a drink. You go in the break room on your breaks, blah, blah, blah. And, if he'd have just come out and said, hey, because he was sitting in his office watching the cameras and there were cameras in the break room. If he'd have just come out,
probably jerking it too. But
yeah. If he'd have just come out and said, look, I saw you look at your phone, like I'd been like, okay, fine. Shouldn't be doing that. But he decides to start swinging his dick around, just chewing me out. And I'm just like standing there speechless. And I go back to my machine and I like stood there for like 10 minutes, not even running it, probably just pretty much stealing time because I was almost in like trying to calm myself down. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And I just said, no, I'm not. No, fuck him. I would rather die than work for this man any longer. I would rather die in a gutter, penniless and alone, than kiss this man's ass for another day.
All right, stop talking about Davis Arini. But anyway.
So I walked up to my boss, Jamaica, we called him, because it was a black guy from Jamaica. That's just what he went by. And I was just like, Jamaica, you've been a great boss, but I'm out. I quit. And I walked out the door. Like, there's just certain times where it's like, no, fuck you. I'm so sick of that shit with these bosses. These boomer bosses, too, by the way. Where it's like, you want to swing your dick around. You want to feel like a big man. Like, fuck you. You need to talk to me like I'm a child.
Yeah, well, actually, the whole idea of him looking like that Big Brother aspect of it, of him looking at the surveillance cameras, like waiting for someone to
Don't you have
engage in
some
an
fucking work
infraction.
to do?
Yeah, exactly. That he's gonna like run down. Probably the only exercise he gets all day is like running out to like yell at you for looking at your fucking phone, um, to read a text while you're fucking trying to drink a fucking Pepsi. It's like fuck you.
By the way, that's boomers too. This is another thing that drives me nuts with boomers because half of them don't know how to fucking use a cell phone. They will get on your fucking ass about a cell phone. Like they'll take 37 smoke breaks in a fucking day. But heaven forbid you send a tweet in the middle of your fucking day. You're stealing from the company.
Well, you know what? If you took up smoking and looked at the phone, then they probably wouldn't have a problem with it.
It was one of those things where it's finally like, and I've had a couple bosses like that where it's like, you know what? No. Like you can eat my ass.
Well, here's a question I have, and I think we were briefly talking about this the other night: the overtime and mandatory overtime. Like, can they act? Because, like, let's say you sign up for 37 and a half hours a week, 40 hours a week, whatever. Does a law say they can demand that you have to work 50
A
hours a
lot
week?
of these places can. I don't know, man. Some of these labor laws, like I've seen places do stuff that I thought was against the law, but like for example, I had a temp service send me to a place for a little while that had in an 8-hour shift one 10-minute break. That was it.
No, so you don't even get
Which
the half hour between.
yeah, you didn't get a 20-minute lunch. You can break. Most places it's like a break every 2 hours,
Well, a lot of
and the
times,
one.
it would be like you get 30 minutes and then two 10-minute breaks. Anyway, but go ahead.
Yeah, a lot of places it's like that, but no, it's one 10-minute break, and I'm like, this is like barely fucking legal shit. You know what I mean? And I've just seen a lot of that from places. I mean, mandatory overtime is a place a lot of factory, manufacturing, warehouse, whatever that they'll do. I don't mind a little bit of it. You know what I mean? I don't mind if it's like, hey, we're slow. We all got to buckle down this week. You know what I mean? But when it becomes like, yeah, we've been doing it for 2 months or some shit, it's like, motherfucker. Like this job I'm at actually now, I remember last year around December, they were hitting everybody with mandatory overtimes, a lot of Saturdays, and everybody was pissed off because you can imagine everybody's got Christmas shit to do.
Yeah.
Me, I'm notoriously done my Christmas shopping, in fucking October, you know what I mean? By Black Friday at the latest. But a lot of people obviously aren't that like that. And even me, it's like, I got like family member and friends that are like, hey, come over. I'm having a Christmas party kind of shit, People want to do stuff around that time. And I remember the one weekend, it was the Saturday that the Spider-Man movie come out, the one with the multiverse one with all the 3 versions. And like I wanted
Oh,
to see the
Doctor
movie.
Strange, is that the one?
No, that was after that. But there was a Spider-Man movie that had like because of the multiverse, it had all 3 versions, like Tobey Maguire and
Oh,
Andrew
yeah.
Garfield and the new
Okay.
guy.
Yeah.
So I wanted to go see that, and I ended up seeing it Sunday because I was working Saturday. And what pissed me off at the time, and it was one of those things where it's like, it's the kind of shit where if you keep pulling this stunt, I will quit. You know what I mean?
Right.
Our boss came in to give us our assignments, and then he left.
Yes, that was but Chris, that was rough of him. He had
I
to
get it. I
drive.
get it. Your salary, I get that. But like, motherfucker, captain goes down with the ship. All right. Like literally, I'm on the worst machine in the fucking department as he's walking by, like, goodbye. See you Monday, Chris. I'm just like waving at him under my breath, going like, yeah, goodbye, man. Enjoy your Saturday. I'll be here. Fucking asshole.
Yeah, that hurts.
I don't know. That's the kind of shit where it's like, come on, man. Like he didn't even leave early. You know what I mean? He was there for like 15 fucking minutes.
Well, when does time and a half kick in? How many hours?
After 40 for these places.
Okay.
Oh,
So
so when we had Labor Day a couple of weeks ago, a month ago, I don't know. Time's been blurring by. 87 years ago, who knows? I didn't get time and a half that week because I worked 40 hours plus 8 hours holiday, which they somehow they shylock that into a different category so that I don't get time and a half. Fucking assholes.
I would be real pissed about that.
Yeah, I wouldn't particularly happy.
Yeah, you were expecting your paycheck to be a lot fatter. That sucks.
I mean, in all fairness, it's been, my paychecks being fat hasn't been the issue these past couple weeks. It's been, don't have any fucking time or energy to do other shit.
Yeah, well, I hope you're banking some of this money and you're not blowing it on, all due respect, books or whatever. I mean, I hope you're banking some of that cash.
I'm buying comic books and hookers mostly.
Oh God! At least you could have said blowing hookers.
Because I want to have the girlfriend experience with the hooker. So that's where, like, after sex, I read a comic book where she complains I don't take her anywhere.
I thought you were going to sign up to one of those I thought you were going to sign up to one of those pay piggy accounts where you can pay these girls money to insult you.
Yeah, I sign up to one of those, but I'm really cheap. I only send them like $1 at a time, so they don't really like me that much.
50 cents at a time, just to fuck.
Yeah, it's like I'm like, it's like that insurance commercial where the guy he's like, I got you $1 to get it on a fishing line.
Yeah, and
oh, you got to be quicker than that.
I'm just thinking we're in a recession right now, and like I was seeing what's her name got married. We were talking about this the other night. What's the name of that porn star again? Riley Reid, is that the one?
Yeah, she got married recently.
Yeah, she got married, right? And apparently, though, like she's like worth like a couple $1 million, and like I think her husband is like worth nothing. So it's like, if maybe he's a smart one. He's
good
like,
for him. I mean, think about it. Like, okay, you can say like, well, your wife is out there, and like, okay, fine. But if he doesn't really give a shit about her, and he's just like, yeah,
well, he could fuck other girls too. I'm sure.
Yeah, it's like I get to fuck Riley Reid for a couple of times, and then I divorced her ass, took half her money. Like fucking Chad.
Yeah, I'm like, I mean, I'm not sure what his name is, but like, I don't think he's like famous or has any money or anything. And he could.
I don't know. That's not a real marriage. I mean, look, it's one thing, and obviously, different people are going to have different reactions. But it's one thing if your wife used to be a porn star. That's a whole different animal than your wife is currently a porn star.
I think we disagree with this a little bit. I'm not.
I'm not even saying you'd have to be on board, but I think even you would have to concede. That's two different levels there. You know what I mean? Having a past is a lot different than having a present.
Yeah, oh no, I got with that. I'm just saying that there's no way in hell I could ever marry a girl whose past is videotaped.
I mean, I'd have to have a pretty special connection with one. Let me tell you that. I'd have to have made a pretty special connection and then told me, oh, by the way, I made the rounds on these sites at one point under such and such name. I'd be like, well, I ain't happy about that, but maybe we can move on. But if it's like, oh, by the way, this is actually what I do for a living now.
Oh no,
so
I could have. I
had a hard day at work.
Yeah, exactly. What are you gonna do? I mean, how was your day?
How was work? It was long and hard.
Long, hard, and uncut. Wasn't that the name of the South Park movie or something?
When you're working retail and you come home and be like, oh man, I was just getting slammed all day.
There's other things about it. I mean, just like the exchange of bodily fluids is really gross. If someone else doing that to you, or a group of people doing that to you, because she does like really hardcore porn. That's why she makes so much money, because she will do like extreme scenes. That's the only reason why she reportedly has the money she does. And I don't even know if she has that much money. I mean, that's just something that I heard. But it wouldn't surprise me, because if you'll do like really extreme shit, there's guys out there that'll pay you money.
I mean, the rumors are, and I don't know how true this is. I don't pretend to have my finger on the pulse of that industry. But the rumor is a lot of these girls, they get a decent amount of fame or infamy, depending on how you put it. and they end up kind of doing escort work.
Yeah, I heard that.
And a
Escorts.
lot of them do. They got their pay piggies. They got their fucking. I mean, you can. If you could get a whole bunch of people sending you donations just because you make fun of Nick Fuentes, imagine the donations one of these girls can get.
Right. Yeah, millions. Yeah.
So you get your pay piggies, you get your thirsty guys, you get your guys that looking for escort thing, or or they order custom videos. If you're a man of particular tastes, and you don't, there's not a lot.
Oh, some like sort of sick shit or something. Yeah.
Or just something weird. You want her to dress up like Wonder Woman or something. You know what I mean? Like something that she just hasn't done a bunch. Then, yeah, you pay for a custom video, I would guess.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I mean,
sometimes some of these like videos that end up out there, you'll see like, in the description that this was a custom video that then they just, I don't know. I'd be mad if I'm paying for a custom video. No, I don't want you just putting it on your site after.
Yeah, I paid for it. Everybody else gets to see it, right? Yeah.
I wrote the script. It's my intellectual property.
Yeah. What if there's any case law on that, right? I mean, I don't know how that works, but
I should at least get credits at the end.
Yeah, you could. Yeah, degenerate guy number 16. Whatever your handle is on her OnlyFans or whatever. But I just the thing that really kind of bothered me about the whole porn star thing. Not that because. I to be honest, I couldn't do it. Even if it was like her past, I couldn't do it. I mean, I'm not talking about a girl who had like, I think we had this conversation like years ago. Like if she did like a little licky with another girl and, or talk dirty into a camera, I wouldn't like it, but I could get past it. But I mean, if she was fucking a professional basketball team, even if it was like, 5 years ago, no, I'm not down with that. I couldn't handle that.
I'll be honest with you, and if I was dating a girl who was doing OnlyFans and I knew all she was doing was like doing nudes and shit like that, I feel like I wouldn't be okay with it purely based on religious reasons. You know what I mean? Like, okay, like no, I can't. But like that aside, I don't think I'd care.
Well, yeah, because
at that point, I'm not the cuck. I'm the bull. Like y'all are paying.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like y'all are paying for it. I'm fucking it. So like,
yeah, I get that. Like, but the only challenge I would have with that was like, yeah, it's not emasculating. For example, like if she's not, if she's with another girl, because I mean. You and I have
been with showing her butthole on OnlyFans.
Well, even like with another girl, because I've dated girls that were like, they like to, be with other girls and stuff.
Otherwise known as girls.
Otherwise known as, yeah. Although I think we're of two minds in that. I don't think every girl is bi. I think a lot of girls are, but I don't think it's universal.
I mean, there's 8 billion people on this planet. Maybe there's exceptions.
Yeah.
I have yet to meet them.
Yeah, I've met some like I remember the only reason I say it is I had a long-term relationship like nearly 2 years with this girl, extremely feminine girl, and she not hated women, I shouldn't say, but she just loved men. Like she was not, she was all about the D. She didn't even like the company of other women. She just liked men. So I don't know if all women are into the licky thing. I mean. I will grant you that most are, but I think there's a lot that aren't. But anyway, that's being said, the challenge I would have is if it's a marriage, like you're making a lifelong, especially you're a Christian, right? So when you get married, it's like you're standing up in front of God, your community, and everybody, and swearing that this is going to be the person you're going to be with, and then you're going to have children. And my challenge with the whole idea of porn stars in general having children is the impact it's going to have on them when they're growing up, and they're going to see their mother being defiled in like, some really extreme ways, because porn nowadays is like, it's not like regular sex.
Yeah, I don't think a porn star should have a kid. I just, nah. I don't begrudge you, walking away from it and settling down, having a husband or wife, whatever. I don't think you should have a kid. That said, though, I mean, there's 8 billion motherfuckers on the planet. I don't think most of the people having kids these days should. And for me, I guess that wouldn't be an issue because I don't.
Hold on a second. I got someone else here.
Yeah,
TJ,
what's going on? What did I walk into?
God, I don't know what you walked into.
We're discussing the merits of marrying former porn stars.
No, well, just give TJ some background.
Philosophical level.
Actually, TJ, there's a famous porn star who you may not have heard of.
Who you will pretend you didn't hear of.
You pretend you didn't hear. Riley Reid, and apparently, she's a multimillionaire who got married, and she's still doing porn.
My favorite thing on Twitter when they announced that, because the replies were just roasting that girl and that dude, just because it's Twitter. But and it was like the top liked reply, but somebody just posted a GIF of her eating some dude's ass and just said, "You may now kiss the bride." That is the most brutal one.
I'm really I feel like I just walked into a conversation where I have no idea who this person is or what is being discussed. But yeah, I'm kind of
Riley Reid. Google her. I'm pretty sure she'll come up.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I'm not going to Google that name.
Yeah, you got to take the safe search off on your browser.
God.
But I think she's been doing porn for since she was 18. So I mean, I'm not sure exactly about that, but I think she's been around for a long time. And an interesting thing about her, she never did it for me. A lot of these who was the other porn star that was popular for a while, and I never found her attractive at all. Not only did I find her attractive, she actually spooked me the fuck out.
You mentioned this the other day. It was Sasha Grey.
Sasha Grey. That fucking bitch had lifeless doll's eyes, like fucking Jaws. I mean,
like a doll's eyes.
Yeah, she got fucking doll. There was nothing behind there. There was no soul, and I was like, how can anyone find this attractive? I just did not get it.
Riley Reid did a video on YouTube a couple years ago, and we were making fun of it on streams, where she attempted to launch a rap career. And it was about as cringy and terrible as you can imagine. And the top comment on that YouTube video is, "This is the most shameful thing you've done on video."
Worse than eating that guy's ass that you kissed her husband with. Yeah.
And here I thought we were going to talk about Ukraine.
We are going to touch on Ukraine. I'll be right back, gentlemen, because I'm going to I need a drink. And I advise everybody else to do the same. I'll be right back.
So yes, we were just having theoretical discussions of would you marry an ex-porn star?
That's a pretty.
The Riley Reid thing is different though, because she's a current porn star, which I feel like that's not even a question. I would not.
Yeah. Well, what's really, I'm not trying to get macabre or whatever, but I think that's going to be. Oh God, how dark do we want to get on this stuff? I feel like a lot of people are doing a lot of women under a certain age, and when I say that, Zoomers, I feel like a substantial amount of them are doing amateur.
Well, I think there's something to that because, I'm old enough to remember, I was a teenager in the late 90s, early 2000s. And, you had to maybe sneak your dad's Polaroid and you took a couple of private pictures with your girl, But nowadays, everybody's got the camera phone and stuff. And then that just kind of leaks. You break up with somebody and they're mad. And it's even if they're not purposely doing amateur, people are, being a little sloppy with the OPSEC. And
I'm thinking of something a little bit more where I've had numerous. I wasn't even part of the discussion, but people were talking about how it was people weren't even getting paid. They were just doing it to be exhibitionists, or they were doing it to get just get attention. I don't fully understand, but I heard enough of it from totally different contexts where I was like, this is these weren't weird freaky people who there was just kind of what passes for normal in the Pacific Northwest, but I was just listening to it and I was like, I feel like a lot of guys are gonna have to deal with this shit. at some
Well,
point.
well,
Like,
isn't exhibitionism is a fetish, right? So there are people who get some sort of, I don't know if it's a directly sexual arousal, but they get some sort of rush out of it. Like,
yeah, but I think that, I mean, this is the thing that a lot of people, especially the whole man up and marry, you need to get my Marys. The problem is like, okay, great. What is the available pool of women, and what's their resume as not workplace, but like what's their history? And when half of them have done some form of this kind of stuff, what do they do? Like it's like it's flippant. It doesn't sound flippant.
hey,
It sounds,
TJ, as Rob says, OnlyFans is a green light. No,
yeah.
I don't know if you guys don't know. At Rob says, like, he
I
has
know.
this really
Yeah.
funny things. No, Rob says, like, one of the things he would say, he goes, if a girl has tattoos, that's a green light. And I was just trolling him, so I was like, if a girl has herpes, that's a green light. If a girl has an OnlyFans, that's a green light. If a girl has AIDS, that's a fucking really green light. You know, I was like, because I mean, the guy would say it's a green light. It was like literally like he was every hole's a goal kind of a thing. You know, it's like, you know, a girl is a transsexual, that's a green light. You know.
Well, and the
Well, if
question
you're
is,
in America first, it is.
well, my question to that I've posed with people who kind of subscribe to that is, you know, at what point do you say, you know, this is beyond the pale for me, even for some guys, and also they're thinking just like within the next 24 hours. They're not thinking long term. So but the
The
problem
next
is
24 minutes.
yeah, well, but the problem is they keep it's like somebody who says, you know, I'm trying to make an investment that's 30 years, and some guy is trying to talk about an investment that lasts 24, you know, weeks, right? So like a shortcut, not trying to get too technical, but like they're trying to inject their mindset into a completely different context instead of just saying, hey, I get why you're not interested in that, but for me that's not the same because that's not what I'm looking for. But instead they go, well, why aren't you? I don't know, it's such a weird way of looking at things, or this inability to just accept that other people don't want what you want.
Yeah, there's not a lot of 30-year marriages that start with, you know, her sucking your dick in the first 10 minutes.
Well,
I mean,
and also,
I'm sure it's
and
happened,
also, it was
not
you know
more.
yeah, well also like, oh, I fell in love with her, you know, tramp stamp, you know. Like I just like I it just but
How
the thing
how
is
did
like,
you know when she was the one for you? Well, I saw her tramp stamp from across the room, and I just knew that she was the one for me. You know.
So how did you meet Grandma? Well, I was selling some Molly at a Maroon 5.
And yeah, I saw that tramp stamp, and you know, as Rob says, you know, that's a green light. So I just went for it, and then you know, happily ever after.
well, you know, it's really interesting how a lot of guys cannot. And it's not even guys; it's just people where they can't imagine the idea that somebody wants to actually get married and have kids. As a man, like for women, that's a little bit different. That they chalk it up to like maternal instincts or whatever they want to call it. But for men, it's like there's this very much this attitude of, oh, somebody brainwashed you, and so they project that onto their conversations with women. And then on top of that, you got the tradcon people who are like, well, let's pretend like none of this ever happened. And then for men like that, it's kind of a weird, like no man's land. You're kind of sitting between the Allies and the Axis powers in World War I. You know, like
Switzerland or something. Yeah.
Well, you're not even Switzerland because you're stuck in the middle of the conflict where it's like they both mistake you for the enemy. And you're like, I'm not the enemy. I just want to get the hell out of here.
I'm just trying to flee to Argentina.
Right. Sorry, excuse me. No, that was good. No, but I mean, I don't know how personally you want to get into this, TJ, but I you know, without breaking confidence, it's like you had a pastor or some interaction with a pastor that was preaching the, for lack of a better phrase, the man up kind of thing. And well, I think you kind of like briefly were tempted by that. Like you were, I don't know if you.
I wouldn't use the word tempted. I'd say that that's been kind of the whole message that they've preached. But some of these pastors go kind of crazy where they're like, you know, they can't confront the idea that women don't want to get married. in a certain generation. So everything, I mean, there was even, and this has nothing to do with me, but like these are the same people who were like, oh, women are joining the military because men are forcing them to, and they're being compelled to. I'm like, are you out of your mind? First of all, we're a voluntary military force. There's no conscription. They're not being like having a gun pointed at their heads. But this is kind of the attitude that they take to it, is that if women, they can't hold women accountable under any circumstances. So they turn and say, well, the reason why men aren't married.
No, TJ, it's the patriarchy. It's systemic.
Okay. I forgot. Yeah. It blows my mind, like how guys, it's like it's raining and they're out there saying it's sunny. It's perfectly blue skies and it's sunny. Like, I'm trying to understand the mental illness involved.
I've heard so many like sermons or speeches or whatever from religious leaders about, you know, going after men for being addicted to porn, or they play too many video games or whatever, just every fault possible with men, and sometimes not even faults. Like, how dare
video games aren't fault. I was just
pointing out a hobby. But and then it's just nothing about women, you know, nothing like, oh, all these, there's these surveys that say all these men in the church are looking at porn. And look, I don't want to excuse men of their behavior. That's not my point. But if a married man is looking at porn, I would say it's probably because the wife's not doing her duties, at least a little bit. You know, most men would rather fuck a 6 than stare at a 10.
Yes, no, that's true. Yeah,
yeah.
Well,
it's got pastor addiction. I mean, if I was a pastor, I'd look at the wife and go like, "When's the last time he sucked his dick?"
Well, I don't know if you could say that as a pastor, but your Beckloff, your friend Pastor Tom, like, he even said that, when he was confronted on this issue just like a couple of years ago in one of your live streams, he was confronted on this. And he said that the reason pastors do this is because the sad truth is because that's how they get women in the pews. That's how they fill up that's how they fill up the church.
Another thing I think is responsible for that. There's like this whole ecosystem of, I guess official term would be a parachurch ministry. And that's these guys that have the radio shows. And they have the TV shows, you know what I mean? Like, if you go turn on Christian radio and somebody's doing a sermon,
right?
That's a parachurch ministry. Now, it's probably a sermon that was given at his church, but it's repurposed for this different organization. And you get your focus on the family groups and all these other groups. And who consumes that content primarily among Christians? Well, a lot of it's consumed by housewives. So you got kind of an ecosystem that's like the Christian daytime TV.
And I never thought about that.
What you have to remember is that ecosystem becomes a large source of resources for pastors. Like, if you're a pastor, you only have so much time, if you're running a little independent church. So you need study guides for your small group. You need just some ideas on, like, sermon research, all that sort of, resources. Who do you end up turning to? And a lot of times you turn to a lot of these organizations that, for ratings reasons, have skewed themselves towards women.
Right. I'd say also, I mean, in Becklife, you can probably confirm this, but my experience with, not every pastor, but a lot of pastors I've encountered where they're mama's boys. They got involved in church, or they went into seminary, they became a pastor because they were groomed at some young age where all the older women in the church said, "You're such a nice boy, you make a great pastor." And they got all this validation from older women. The men never got involved or did anything that was basically the only affirmation he got. So then they go through seminary, and what they learned is you just say yes to everything. You be agreeable. You never say anything unkind, but you also develop this passive aggressive bitch attitude. And then they become a pastor, and they expect to be treated with respect automatically for whatever they do, because that's all they're used to. And then all they've ever learned is to just say yes and do exactly what they're told, because that's the only way you get through some of these seminaries. Because I've kept encountering over the years these pastors where I can clearly tell they were a mama's boy. They didn't have any, they don't convey any kind of masculine energy. So,
or also stand up for a sense. Like they have no sense of boundaries. Like Chris, who is that sick fuck that wanted to put pedophile stuff on his enemy's computer?
Oh yeah, that was James McDonald.
Yeah. Like,
oh,
do you
what?
notice? Do you notice how submissive like all the people around him were? That they
Yeah,
let.
I've noticed with a lot of pastors, especially the big ones, they either fall into that effeminate little weasel thing, or they have this really cartoonish paper alpha bullshit about them.
Yeah.
Your
Like I
Mark
think of Doug
Driscolls and your
Wilson.
James McDonalds do that a lot, where it's like you're listening to a sermon by him, and it's like, why are you yelling at me? Like you can use
No,
your
but and
intellect.
everybody takes it. Like these are other pastors, and they just take it like, like robots. Like they don't. No one stood up to him, like, because he was always around. Like as TJ was talking about these people that were
And
part of it might have been their temperament. Like TJ, I think some of that might be just the people that had a genetic temperament to be.
I think there's a lot of people in the church that are so starved for like an actual man to be up there.
I think that. Yeah, I totally agree. I was going to say that
paper alpha shit, which most people could see through. But when you're stuck in like a churchianity church and all you see is these soy boys up there all the time, when you're starving, you'll gobble down poison.
When you're in the desert, you'll drink dirty water. And like that was the thing with Driscoll is like he actually, because he was preaching in my area, and he I'm not saying he had a positive effect, but like for a lot of men who had no meaningful father figures, it was like the only thing they had that was actually seemingly masculine. Like somebody was yelling at them instead of talking to them like they were 5 years old and talking to them like a little girl. There was a guy yelling at them. A lot of guys, apparently, not that I would know, but a lot of guys grew up never having a dad yell at them. And so it was like, that's why he was.
Well, that's why I'm so wimpish, because I didn't have the father.
No, it's like it's just amazing how well the other person I would throw out there is Doug Wilson, because they just did a whole Christian nationalism. He's going to impose a theocracy type thing. It's like no, Doug Wilson's followers. First of all, I don't have respect for Doug Wilson. I've read a lot of his stuff. Some of his stuff's good. The problem is he's a weasel, and he's a snake. And the reason why is because when he gets called out, he doesn't actually address the problems, and his followers and his acolytes just swarm and do the whole narcissistic, like there's something about him he's providing to them. The same thing with Driscoll, where he's providing something for them that they don't have, whether it's a father figure or whatever it is, but they see an attack on him as an attack on something else. It reminds me of what Henry II said in the film Becket, if you ever watched that film about Thomas Becket, where he says, when you attack my nobles, you attack me, and when you attack me, you attack England.
Yeah.
And so like they interpret it as an attack on something other than the person, and they automatically see it as something bigger than just that person. But Doug Wilson's also written a lot of just incredibly bad writing. Like, and I'm a writer. I've been a writer my entire career. I can tell bad writing, and I can tell when someone's being, what's the right word for it? They're being disingenuous in their writing. They're trying to avoid something. And they're trying to say something without actually saying it, so that people who understand
skirt an issue, is that a phrase that would be proper?
Yeah, skirt an issue. They're trying to say something where people who know what they're trying to say, because they know it's like freaking, since we're talking about Ukraine, it's like the Ukrainian business, where everybody apparently who supports the Ukraine conflict apparently seems to know why we're fighting it, or why we, and I use the term we loosely, whereas if you ask them, they can't come up with a very specific. First of all, they act like we're at war, and then when I say we're actually not at war, we never declared war. And by the way, we haven't declared war since 1941.
Actually, it wasn't until 1942, August.
1942. Yeah, we haven't declared war for 80, 90 years. Like, what do you mean we're at war? And they just sit there and look at you like they're all in the know, but they don't say what's actually going on. It's the same thing with Doug Wilson, where he writes something.
Hold on a second. I just got to change the channel because he brought up Ukraine, and there's this really funny. It came up my Twitter feed, and I wish I could remember the guy that did it. And he had a world map up, and he was asking random people on the street to point to Ukraine, like on the world map. And I understand, like, a lot of people wouldn't know exactly where Ukraine was. Like, I could understand, like, people fucking up and hitting Poland or something, like a country that borders it or something like that, whatever.
Yeah, but I pointed to Hawaii. I was way.
Okay. Well, okay, you're close. You're not too far off. You know what the number one place people pointed to was?
Oh God, tell me.
Australia. I'm like, how the fuck are you fighting a land war against Russia from Australia? I was like, I didn't
That's how
get
good
it.
Putin is.
Australia. I was like, Jesus Christ, man.
Dude, Putin. I'm just trying to convey to the audience here and to everybody how my personal feelings. Putin could end up like completely controlling Europe and running everything in his government from London, and we would never know. Like, that's just how cynical I am about modern media and about modern everything. Where, they're talking about how, and John, you'd appreciate this because you military history guy. They were talking about how this recent Ukrainian offensive just completely crushed the Russians. I'm like,
they're marching on Moscow. Yeah.
Well, it's like, it's not the Falaise Gap, dude. Like, they attacked an area where there was reserve troops who withdrew immediately. They didn't encircle any Russian troops. They didn't take any key areas. It wasn't anything major. They just withdrew. And clearly, if the Russians had thought that that land was worth preserving because it was like some sort of like geographically important or strategic high grounds, they would have held the area at all costs. Like, just shut the hell. Like, it just pisses me off to listen to so many retards talking who have had no military. They have not studied any military tactics. They don't understand what a double envelopment is. They've never heard of Kane. They don't know who Hannibal is, and they're like, "Oh, Putin's," and they talk like a high school bitch, like some high school valley girl. We're like, "Putin's been owned." It's like, have you read any Russian history? These people can lose 5 million people, and they're like, "Yeah, we'll get over it."
What else have you got? Like, yeah, I mean,
yeah, exactly.
It's like only people will make more. It's pretty easy.
It's like vodka, right?
Yeah. No, it's what TJ's saying. It's like totally right on. It's like the Russians sacrifice. It's kind of like I don't want to get too deep in the weeds here for people who are not into like military history, but it was kind of like Rommel. Like, he understood that controlling vast amount of desert didn't mean anything. Like, you have to seize the port cities and everything like that. So like if he had a fall back or whatever, that didn't really mean anything. So it was like the Russians didn't lose any troops. They saw that,
Right.
like, and it was mostly militia that was there actually anyway.
Right.
And they just fell behind the Russian lines. They didn't lose any troops, or very, very little, and probably cost the Ukrainians large amounts when they were doing, because it was a fighting retreat. So the Ukrainians lost huge amounts of troops. The Russians are just beginning to mobilize now.
Right.
And actually, from what I've just been reading, earlier today, the mobilization actually happened earlier, but it hadn't been publicized. And they talked about they're not. A lot of people don't understand this. They're not calling up 300,000 troops like right away, because logistically you can't train three. It doesn't work that way. They're going to slowly funnel these people in.
Well, and that's the problem that a lot of idiots who've been trying to follow this conflict don't realize is they're like, "Oh, Russia, it's been 8 months and Russia has taken over Ukraine." That's because they didn't send in their main troops. They sent in militia. They sent in third-rate troops. They sent in kind of the expendable troops who were not well trained. Great. Now those people have combat experience. Their best trained troops are still being held in case there's a direct conflict with NATO, which I don't think is ever going to happen, because NATO doesn't have any kind of military presence to put up. And now they're calling in reserves. Like, they clearly, if you just
they can recycle their men out, like the guys, so the guys don't suffer exhaustion.
Right.
They can fall back to the reserves. New troops can come up. They can rotate them in and out. And that's unlike Ukraine, they can't do that because they don't have fresh. I mean, they do have a huge amount of mercenaries apparently that have been coming in, if you've seen the videos, but not in the numbers that really matter. I mean, you're talking like maybe 1,000 mercenaries, not in the tens or hundreds of thousands of mercenaries.
I can't wait till we send in ground troops, because we're going to send in like the brigade of transsexuals.
Oh yeah. Do you see? Have you guys seen the fucking?
Oh my god, we've just lost 41% of them, and it's like, but we haven't.
I mean, could you imagine? Like, no wonder, like the Russians, like, I don't even think they see like the Ukraine.
that, well, of course, they see Ukraine as an existential threat. They're just seeing like American culture as an existential threat. They're seeing like these, and I know Beckloff, you're up on this, and TJ, you probably are as well. These fucking drag shows with the little kids where they got these fucking 300-pound guys with the fake tits.
Did you see the transsexual flags that were flying, I think, in some city in Ukraine, like the same way they flew the swastika back in like the 30s? It's like, it's and then they talk. I've asked people about like, why do we care so much about what's going on in Ukraine? Nobody ever says, oh, we're protecting democracy, because it's like, they shut down all the dissident parties in Ukraine.
Yeah, they outlawed them.
They're like, well, we got to protect LGBTQ people. I'm like,
so I saw a meme that the lefties were passing around where it would like some like little 10-year-old boy is at like a table at Hooters, you know what I mean, and all the hot waitresses are around him.
Oh God, yeah.
And then like they're like, and then they'll show like the drag queen thing, and they'll be like, how is this any different? And I'm like, I don't know. Maybe it's a lot less harmful for a 10-year-old boy to be around pretty girls than
I was going to say, I don't have a problem with the Hooters thing per se.
I mean, because let's remember, when we're talking about the drag queen, we're not even talking about the 10-year-old boy being around attractive men. We're talking about men that are dressed like some sort of a demon from a John Walters fever dream. Like,
something from like a song
and the boy around Chippendale dancers. At least that's a man and not a demon.
Right, yeah. At least
this is the worst you could possibly do, and you're like, I don't see the difference.
Yeah, and what's funny is these same people think that if a 35-year-old guy is dating a 23-year-old girl, it's like,
how dare you do that?
Suddenly the franchise, the 19th Amendment, the right to vote, women's empowerment just vanishes. It dissipates like,
look, I'll have you know,
in the rain.
I'll have you know that girl was 17 years old. Right? You pedophile.
Yeah, and suddenly the girl is not able to consent to a relationship with a guy who's in his mid-30s or whatever, and suddenly he's a groomer, and it's like, okay, so you think that adults dressing up in drag for a bunch of toddlers isn't, perversion, but a guy dating another adult female is it's like.
I saw this 19-year-old guy was once dating a 16-year-old, and I was offended. Now, if you excuse me, I'm going to go teach a kindergartner about anal sex.
No, Chris, they call it, sorry, I have to correct you. It's called anal fisting. I'm not kidding. There was a thing where they talked about anal fisting to kids. And I've been into some freaky shit. I've never anal fisted a girl in my life.
That was the weirdest episode of the Muppets.
That was
some behind the scenes stuff.
The behind the scenes stuff. But another thing that's like really freaky is they redefine the word pedophilia to.
Oh God!
Someone's gonna have to correct me on this. They don't call it pedophilia. It's minor attracted person.
They're going to change it to where it's defined as non-consensual with the child. That's what's going to happen. I'm just saying, like, they've already laid the groundwork with the whole tranny thing where kids can transition.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. Why if a kid can agree to transition, why can't a kid agree to like
yeah. And this is where the whole projection thing is going on, where they're going to have it so, and the thing is, like, as much as I could get pissed off at that, I really don't get angry at the pedos and the groomers and the trannies and the LGBTQ plus community. I get pissed off at like the seemingly normal people who then act completely stunned and we don't understand what's going on. It's like, you understand what's going on. You're just a bunch of fill in the blank, can't use the word. Your channel would get, canceled. Like, you know what's going on. You just don't have the balls to deal with it the way that, our forefathers would have dealt with it. You're degenerate. Like, I have less respect and I hate these people more that allow this to happen to their kids. I've read several stories where like the kids go through these transition and like, where were you asleep at the wheel? Like you can't not notice this stuff. You weren't paying attention to your own child. It is like, I do hold the parents responsible for this stuff, because if we held the parents responsible, then stuff would actually stuff would change. But instead, they can claim that they're the victim too, and it's like, no, it's your responsibility. So that's kind of my thought.
Well, Chris, what are your thoughts on that? Like, as the parents, like, I mean, I agree with what TJ said, but I mean, I don't have kids, so it's really easy for me to talk shit. But I mean,
well, I don't have any either that I know of, and
yeah, I'm in the same boat. But where do you fall on this? Like,
I would definitely say, yeah, you come down on the parents on that kind of shit. That's just inexcusable. There's beyond no reason for that, and it's usually not even the kid pushing it. It's some single mom that wants fucking attention or some shit like that. Like, that's always what this stuff boils down to. Like, every teenager now thinks it's trendy to call themselves pansexual, queer, otherkin, or whatever the other bullshit, and it's like, I can't.
What is other?
If I had a kid and he's like, Dad, I think I'm a girl, and I just look at him and go, like, just be gay, all right? Like, just do that instead, all right?
Just go suck a dick. Just don't cut yours off.
You don't actually have to cut yours off to suck a dick.
Yeah, go suck another dick.
There's nothing stopping you. All right, enough's enough. Like, you're just chasing a fucking trend.
Did you ever watch the interview?
These kids, it's the ultimate wishing on a monkey's paw for stuff. You chase the fucking demon of lust, and then these people basically end up neutering themselves, and then they have no fucking sex drive anymore, or they've completely destroyed themselves and turned themselves into some unfuckable monster that no one gay or straight wants to fuck.
And they drive off a cliff. Yeah.
Yeah. And then they fucking kill themselves. Cause it's like, of course, like you turned yourself into a monster. Like, every once in a while, one of them turns themselves into something passable, but that's the minority. Like, look at Elliot Page now. Like that.
Yeah.
That person looks like a monster now. Okay. Cause it's not
I haven't seen her in ages. What does she look like?
Well, she transitioned to a male.
Sure, she did.
She looks like a fucking a monster. There's no other way to put it. It looks, because it's not just ugly. It's like uncanny valley ugly. You know what I mean? It's like circus ugly.
Right. Yeah.
Like you could. So yeah, this person's never gonna get a fucking major role ever again. Occasionally they'll get work in something that a studio puts out to virtue signal, but the days of being actually of having a viable career are over for this person. They've, and no matter how many times, no matter how much the people out there are like, oh yeah, it's great, so stunning and brave. At the end of the day, this person goes home and looks in the mirror and can't shake the nagging feeling, my God, what have I done? In the quiet moments, the quiet screams the truth. Okay. In those quiet moments, when all the applause is stopped, what's running through the head is, dear God, what have I done?
Yeah.
Like, I look like a goddamn Star Trek alien.
Well, and also, like, if you're a good father and your son says, Dad, I think I'm trans, it's one, how did I fail you by not noticing like all this? And also, whose bitch do I need to go choke?
What's your teacher's name and where does she live?
Yeah. it's just like that would be my reaction, is like, who's abusing you right now? And like how and then you're kind of looking up the local laws, like how many years do I have to get?
It would be worth it. It would be worth it.
Like,
you could,
like,
no,
son,
seriously.
I love you. I won't see you for your graduation, probably your college graduation, but I love you. And then you go out and you deal with it. And then you come back.
But if there's ever, the greatest, look, if you have to die for something, dying to protect your children, what's more important than your country? More important than even your wife. Protecting your children.
These days, though, I don't even know if it would be like the kid got horribly abused. These days, it might just, because there's so ridiculous amounts of it that these days it's like it's become like the equivalent of a teenager, like, I'm goth now, Dad. I'm listening to shitty emo music. Except, that doesn't fuck you up for life. It's just a phase that you go through. So, there is kind of a phase where I'd almost be like, oh, yeah, Dad, I'm trans. Like, okay, cool. That's fine. Go do your homework. All right. You shut up. All right.
Well, Chris, what was that show you were talking about?
While you're under my roof, you're not chopping your dick.
Yeah. No, what was that show you were talking about where people were in love? Like a guy was in love with his fence.
Oh, God.
And No, there was like this weird paraphilia, and the other guy was in love with his car, and he was breaking it to his dad that he loved his car, and like he tells his dad he loves his car, and he's like, dad's like, yeah, it's a really nice car, yeah, I love it too.
You
Like,
know, it
but
honestly reminds me what my dad in like a small group for the one church, and my dad didn't really, he grew up, I guess, in the church, but then spent most of his adult life away from it. I didn't grow up in the church, so he talks like a Navy man, you know what I mean? So you get these like churchianity people, and they were like, oh, we stopped going to the beach because Timmy's a teenager now and he's starting to look at the girls, and my dad just blurts out like, would you rather you look at the guys? There's kind of only two options. I mean, I guess you could look at both if you count that as a third. Like, wait, I'm crazy teenage boy. Like at this point, if your teenage boy's trying to chase pussy, be fucking thankful. He hasn't been programmed into being a furry other kid wanting to chop his dick off.
yeah, so where I guess I'm asking a really unfair question here, but like because I know you don't actually have any absolute answers, only guesses, but how do you guys war game this out?
I would say in about 20 years, you're going to have a whole lot of serial killers. I'm not even joking. I want you to imagine something. You're a teenager, and we've all been teenagers. It's rough. It sucks. You're starting to form genuine self-awareness. Your hormones are screaming at you. It's a fucking hellscape in a lot of ways. And then you get sucked down this fucking rabbit hole. And next thing you know, you're told, if you just chop your dick off, everything's going to be fucking great. And the whole of society is telling you this. Fucking doctors are telling you this, and then fine, you do it. And now your life it's just garbage forever. There's no fixing it. There's no going back,
And that's where you have Nuremberg.
You can't even have sex anymore. You can't fuck a dude or a woman or nothing. It's just nothing but you got nothing now. And society kind of made you do this. Not made you, but you could tell yourself that. Society.
Well, you were a kid, right? So you can make the argument.
You were a stupid fucking kid. Yeah. We bitch now about like, oh, we tricked 18-year-olds into taking on too much college loans, and we have a crisis. Well, we're gonna have something like a student loan crisis. Only there's no bailing it out in about 20 years.
No,
they're gonna hand out free dicks.
We got the chopped off titties and dicks crisis in about 20 years, and I mean, people are just gonna go fucking Batman villain on motherfuckers. Like, there's only so far you can push.
James Wood even said like some of these parents, they're gonna get chopped up and stuffed in their freezers by their kids.
That's what I mean.
He's not, actually, James Wood says they're gonna get chopped up and stuffed in the trunk of their car and then driven off a cliff. Yeah, that's how he put it.
You remember in like the 70s and 80s, we had like just lots of serial killers. Now a lot of it was overblown by the media because it makes a good story. It sells newspapers and headlines and all, but it ain't gonna be. You're gonna see some Gotham City shit in about 20 years.
Well, you're right, because like one serial killer generates a lot of
and if he's killing and dying for a cause, especially for the trans cause, like de-trans people, and they kill. First of all, they kill the people who talk them into doing it. That's where I'm not terribly worried. I think that they're going to be more of like the traditional like killers from the 80s or whatever, where kind of like from Joker, where they're not going to just randomly kill people. They're going to kill specific people. They're going to kill their parents, teachers. They're going to kill people like doctors, people who are specifically responsible for their problems. They're not going to go after just random people.
Well, get that, but you'll also get like the guy who wanted to turn into a girl, and he just starts picking off girls that look like the kind of girl he wanted to become, or something like that. You know what I mean? You're going to get. It's going to be messy. A lot of people that deserve it are going to get theirs, but a lot of people that don't.
But isn't there something else about the if you take these prepubescent drugs? I don't know the name of them. That originally, from what I understand, these drugs were originally developed to prevent a real condition. There's a real condition called precocious adolescence, and it's when children enter puberty too early, and it's dangerous because it can cause like bone.
By the way, you just reminded me, and I just got to say it because I heard it a bunch of places, and it fits so well. So that Nick Fuentes guy? There's a lot of rumors now that, and I think he had mentioned something like this on a stream or something, that he was starting to get that early puberty, and they put him on puberty blockers, and they like kept him
No
on
shit.
too long, and that's
Too
why he
long.
looks like a little like all his fucking mental issues that he very clearly has comes from, you know, being a little 90-pound guy with a baby dick.
Okay, so he might have been on it a little too long.
So yeah, that's like, it's one of those theories that I heard about him where it's like, I don't know that that's true, but holy shit, does it fit the data I have? Like,
Okay, well, but those drugs that were actually designed for a legitimate purpose for kids who enter it too young, that's, from what I understand. Now, I'm not an expert on transsexual reassignment, but from what I understand, that's what they originally were using. Now they probably have more different drugs because there's money in it, but those drugs also, when you give them, it doesn't just affect their sexual development, it affects their brain development as well.
oh yeah,
Because the brain is still forming, and when you fuck with those hormonal fluctuations, and that's permanent, that cannot be reversed.
yeah, this isn't something that can be undone. I mean, you know, maybe at some point, maybe necessity being the mother of invention, maybe we'll figure out ways to mitigate or reverse this shit. But for now, you're kind of fucked. And I mean, it's a choice you made as a teenager. Like, of all the like,
Now, sometimes not even teenagers. Some of these people are
yeah,
like,
but I mean, right now it's mostly teenagers doing it. I know they're pushing for earlier, but right now you got a lot of teenagers doing it, and it's like, imagine if I had to like imagine all the dumb shit you liked as a teenager, and this is just permanent now. You know, like, you have to listen to Limp Bizkit for the rest of your fucking life. You know what I mean? It's like that, but a million times worse.
dude, I was in the 80s when I was a teenager. You know what that shit would have been like? Yeah.
Just nothing but hair metal for every time
Yeah.
you turn on the radio. It's just hair metal.
Yeah, guys used hairspray. I would have to listen to that for all eternity.
Just fucking MC Hammer on repeat.
Oh, well,
Forever.
even before him, yeah. But
I mean, you should. That's ridiculous, you know. And again, we're having two different conversations right now that are kind of the same conversation. We're having it two different ways. Right now, we're admitting as a country we shouldn't have told a bunch of 18-year-olds to go get, you know, go tens of thousands of dollars in debt to get a degree in puppetry. You know what I mean? Like, okay, that was a bad idea, and we've got something of a debt crisis.
Yeah, but hold on a second. What are your thoughts on getting a master's in interpretive feminist dance?
Well, that's where the money is.
Yeah.
But no, like, we recognize that was a bad thing we did. Like, and look, you still got the boomer Republicans, pull yourself up by your bootstraps. But a lot of people recognize there's a lot of people that are caught in a very bad situation there. I don't think student loan forgiveness is the way to go. I think it would have been better to do something like make it absolvable through bankruptcy, whatever.
Yeah.
A lot of people are recognizing you got something of a critical mass going here with too many people in inescapable debt.
Yeah.
And as we're admitting that was a bad idea, we're also like, okay, but the 18, 19-year-olds right now, you should chop off your titties and or your dick.
Yeah, that's where I really hold a lot of
Like,
boomers who
we
are like,
we made a mistake, and now we're like making a kind of similar but way worse mistake.
That's what, and that's what I find so funny is like so many boomers who told me to take out. I never took out student loans. I paid for college. You know, not that I paid for it entirely on my own, but like if I'd had to, I could have paid for it all on my own. Because I deliberately went to a cheap state public university because I wanted to avoid debt and worked a lot of crappy jobs. But like, these are the same dumbasses who turn around and be like, oh, all these millennials and their student loans. I'm like, well, you were telling me to take out student loans and I completely ignored you, and rightfully so. And then they're like, can you believe they're telling kids to get to do transition? I'm like, yeah. Like, you guys are bullshit with me. Did any of you bastards tell me that? Which I was, for various reasons, I completely ignored them on debt. Like, oh, you know, you pay it off after your words, and you know it's not a big deal. Oh, it's a debt you can't ever discharge, like with regular bankruptcy. Like, they never said that. Nobody said that. Yeah, I was more. And that's what pisses me off, and this is where you just don't listen to any of these people. They're just, this is what I would tell younger people. Like, I'm not saying ignore everything a boomer says, but just everything they say, treat it like they're the enemy. Like, you double check everything they say. If they say, oh, you should take out a loan, it's like, well, why? And then if they say whatever it is, like everything they say is based off of 50, 40 years context.
Yeah, back then you could work off. You could pay for college while you worked at Burger King. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah. I remember when I took out my first house loan, and it was a while ago. It was before everything that's going on now. And I had a relative who was like, could not believe the interest rate, and it wasn't even low by a couple of years ago. It was reasonable, but they're like, well, back in my day, we had to pay interest rates of 12%. I'm like, well, that's why I didn't talk to you about my house purchase. You'd have sat there and been like, well, it's this much, and you got to pay 12% interest, and it's just like, no, like, and there's all these new these new federal programs and all this other stuff that's come about to help people pay for houses. Like, you guys didn't stay. It's like a doctor who became a doctor in like 1950 and never went to a single conference, never read a scientific or medicine journal, never stayed up to date, and they suddenly think that their opinion matters on medicine.
Well, I mean,
30 years after.
Earlier in the show is like, I got saved from the student loan crisis because I was a directionless piece of shit out of high school, and all I wanted to do was fuck my girlfriend and read Spider-Man comics. And it turns out you don't need a college degree for either one of those things.
Well, you will soon, Chris. You will soon. There's probably a degree for that now.
Yeah, you don't even need a lot of money. I mean, I was, but I was saved basically because I was just so directionless and lazy and just like, so I guess despite being a millennial, maybe I'm a Gen Xer at heart. I'm like, what's the point? So bullshit.
Yeah, I get that's why. And another thing that really pisses me off, because like you guys are millennials, and like all I hear about is like the millennials, the Zoomers, and the Boomers, and like no one talks about my fucking generation. Literally, no one talks about the Gen Xers. We don't exist.
Well, the reason why is that Gen Xers are a small population demographically, but also they kind of have this attitude of don't care. I mean, like, not to use him as an example, but Rob says like his attitude towards women and dating is like, okay, it's a green light. Like whatever women have is a green light. So they're not really.
Yeah, but I could put on a dress and like, give him a fleshlight and he'd fuck.
I think Gen Xers were, I mean, I'm not saying this to you, but like a lot of them were whatever it takes. And it was very much.
Well, I think Gen Xers were basically like, the game is rigged. We know it. We don't want to play. I mean, that was.
No, they played. If they hadn't played, they would have been like millennials. I mean, millennials played it, but the game was rigged against them. Whereas Gen Xers are not the ones who are dealing with the student loan debt, because up until 2005, it wasn't.
No, I got to give you that about the student loan debt. Yeah. I mean, I actually, because I came like financially, like my family, I won't get into it, but we didn't have any money. So I literally got paid to go to college. Yeah. I mean, like after my books, and I mean, my tuition was paid for, my books was paid for, and I had work study. Do they still have work study, by the way? You know what that is? Work study, where it was like a job sponsored by the government. But I mean, I had to work, but anyway.
I don't know. I'm not a fancy college boy.
I went to
get out of high school.
I went to city college, so but that's the way it was back. So I took out no loans to go to school, and that was doable if you wanted to go to. I mean, not if you wanted to go to like some expensive school, then you would have to get a scholarship or something like that. But if you wanted to go to like a city college or something, like I'm not talking about community college, I mean a 4-year college, you could do it. I mean, it was I work full time in the summers, and I work part time, work-study during the semester, and it was doable. I mean, it was tough, but it should be tough. That's that's the way I looked at it. Now it's not like that though. Like now, like the price of you see these guys like they're in sophomore year of college and they owe 40 grand. I'm like, what the fuck? How are you gonna ever pay this back?
Yeah, you and it just gets to a point where you can't. I mean, like, imagine this scenario. So you got a guy that gets out of school, and maybe even just dropped out because he just couldn't hack it, And now what does he do? You know what I mean? He's barely getting by. He's got these loan officers chasing him around. He can't even stay at a job too long or they'll start garnishing his wages, and they're chasing him around for money that he doesn't have and quite possibly will never have. He's got and you got to give guys like that an out. That's why I say, like, the best solution would have been make these absolvable through bankruptcy.
Yeah, discharge.
It's not completely off the hook because there are consequences for bankruptcy, but it gives the guys that are just submerged like a lifeline,
Yeah, well, because I mean, if your wages are going to be totally garnished, why even work?
Yeah, like I've known people that was like that. Where I knew a guy at one job where he quit. I mean, he was doing fine at that job. He's like, well, they found me. I got to go get another job. He'd been there a couple years, and then they found him through some sort of whatever background checks they do, and got to go get another job. I remember he'd get calls on his cell phone once in a while for the bill collectors, like in the break room. And like, I remember one time he had like the Spanish lady yell at him in Spanish or something, just because he was just fucking with him at this point. Because it's like, I don't have the money. What do you want me to do? But yeah, you got to, at a certain point, you got to give people like that an out. There shouldn't have ever been loans that aren't absolvable through bankruptcy. That should have never been.
The reason they did that on purpose, because the way it works is the government is the co-signer of the loan. So the bank gets paid either way. So even if the student doesn't pay the loan, we, the taxpayer, are on the hook. And that's the way those loans. I don't know if you knew that, Chris. That's the way it works. So even if they don't pay it, the bank still gets paid.
Of course it does. Somehow the bank always still gets paid.
Right. So the way it should be was that if you want to go to college, you go to a bank and they say, okay, let me see your SAT.
You know what? The 08 bailout, part of that should have been, all right, student loans are gone.
The which bailout?
The 08 bailout for all these banks.
Student
loans are gone.
Well, no, I wouldn't say student loans are, guaranteed student loans. In other words,
all the guarantees are gone. Bankruptcy.
If the bank thinks if you're a good risk and you say, okay, what do you want to get a degree in? And they say, interpretive feminist dance. And they say, okay, well, the average person with a degree in interpretive feminist dance makes, $15,000 a year. Okay, so we'll lend you $500. At 18%, because you're a huge risk and you're never going to make any money. And somebody else says, I want to get a degree in petroleum engineering, and they say, oh, petroleum engineer starts off with at $75,000 a year. We'll pay you that. You know what I mean?
And then that guy can minor in interpretive dance,
and he can minor in feminist interpretive dance. Yeah. Then that's the way it should be done. But the way it is now is like the government would guarantee your loan regardless of what you major. I mean, they actually have. I remember I heard. Actually, it was Ann Sturzinger that first told me this years ago. Like, she was on the L in Chicago, and she saw these ads for degrees in social justice. Now, I have no idea. I can only imagine what the fuck they were teaching in those classes. What the fuck do you do with a degree in that? I mean, exactly what is that, first of all?
You go find a hobby people are enjoying and then ruin it?
Yeah, I mean, how do you get – I mean, seriously, like, you get a degree in that. Like, what the fuck do you do with that? I mean, and they probably charge, like, a 4-year program in that. Like, how many tens of thousands of dollars is that? And if the government doesn't pay for it –
you can learn how to be a professor in social justice.
Yeah, a professor in social justice. I mean, what the fuck kind of nonsense is that? I mean, it's insanity.
Circling back, TJ had mentioned Doug Wilson, and I actually kind of went on a Doug Wilson rabbit hole on my channel a couple months ago, and he is
which one is Doug Wilson, by the way? Because
he's one of these religious right guys, which is almost an antiquated term, but for lack of a better term. Who's big into like Christian nationalism. He's he damn near owns the I think it's Idaho town of Moscow. And he's been quietly building his little empire up, but like he's the most stereotypical of those kind of guys you can imagine in a lot of ways. If I was casting a movie in the 80s where like the pastor is trying to stop teenagers from dancing or something, I would cast Doug. Well, he's trying to shut down the rec center. Like it'd be Doug.
So I'll throw in what John and I were talking about a while ago.
Real quick, this is my favorite video. So he does a video, and it was called "The Central Lie of Porn." Right? Like, what is the lie at the heart of the message of porn? And I thought he was going to say something along the lines of that sex can be consequence free, because that's kind of the fantasy world porn portrays, where there's no.
That would be great though.
Nobody in porn, nobody in the fictional worlds that porn portrays has an unwanted pregnancy or gets the herpes.
Yeah, I would love that.
Even just the emotional and psychological damage from being promiscuous, that doesn't exist in the world that porn portrays, and that's obviously not the world we live in. So I thought that's what he was going to say, but no lie. He said that the central lie of porn, that the lie that porn teaches young men is that women like sex. I'm not kidding. He says the central lie of porn is that women like sex and as much as men. Now, I watched this on stream and I was like, Doug, my man, I'm willing to believe that they don't like it with you. That checks out. But I'm hardly Chad Thundercock over here, but I can tell you that when a woman's into you, she can be downright exhausting.
Okay. Yes.
So they don't like no, Doug. That's not. And see what's it's funny because
that was his big reveal. Women don't like sex.
And it's funny to make fun of him because he's an obese, boomer evangelical in a sweater vest who hasn't seen his dick since Carter was in office. So it's fun to make fun of him. But the real danger there is he's telling men something that in his own way is just as toxic as some of what the worst corners of the manosphere were saying. Because, like, guys, if a woman doesn't, okay, if you're really religious and you're not going to have sex before marriage, that's fucking great. Don't get me wrong. But you should want to. It should be almost a struggle to make it to the way.
Yeah,
she doesn't.
Can I throw something in? One of the problems, I've thought about this a long time, where in church culture today, Christian culture, there's this idea that you shouldn't want to have sex with a woman until you're married to her.
Yeah,
like you're not supposed to desire
you want to, or you shouldn't have it.
Well,
they would say you shouldn't want to.
I'm being very specific. You are not supposed to sexually desire a woman unless you marry her. That is a unspoken value.
What are you, a fucking robot?
Well, that's my point. It's
you can't turn it on and off like Data with.
Well, no, but their whole thing is like, it's the same thing with let's say you're a teenage guy in the Christian church. You're part of a youth group. You see a girl that you like. She's got a nice figure.
She's got really big sweaters.
Yes.
Really huge tracts of land.
Tracts of land, and you go to date her, and you show up to her house, and the dad goes, "What's your intentions for my daughter?" It's like, I'm thinking, like, as a man now, if my son was to ask me this, like, Dad, what do I say? It was like, well, don't say anything, but like, if his thought is like, how dare you want to see my daughter naked? Like, he clearly wants her to be a nun.
I would take that one candy bar that has the slogan "Nut after nut after nut." Well,
it's just like I find it so amazing that a lot of these dads are like, "How dare you want to see my daughter naked?" It's like, dude, how did she come to be? By your wife being at some point, I would assume, naked. Like, this is the problem with like the Christian church is like. They talk about sex like in this very weird way where they're like, oh, it's sacred and it's special. It's like, okay, great. Like, but then you break down the details and they go, well, yeah, because I remember I was talking about like with some people and like the idea that a man sees a woman before marriage as sexually desirable is like, oh my God, like that's evil. Like that's demonic or whatever. I'm like, no, like clearly
That's not biblical, is it?
no,
You guys
it's
can help me.
not.
I'm not a Christian, so
Well, dude, how, like, as Beckloff could probably say, most of modern Christianity is not biblical.
No. Here's the other thing that I think Doug was kind of almost right on. Women have a very different sex drive than men. And I've heard this analogy before. I don't remember where I heard it or I'd give credit. But a man's sex drive is like a tiger. It's like when you're a male at the age of about 11, you're handed a pet fucking tiger. And you got to come to terms with this tiger or it will destroy you and everything you love. You gotta come to, and it's a tiger. It's always ready to fuck shit up. There's a brief moment after it's eaten that it's gonna take a nap, but after that, it's actually ready to fuck shit up. A woman's sex drive, though, is more like an elephant. An elephant is chill as fuck. It ain't got a problem with nobody until it does. And then it's going to fuck shit up. And guess what? A tiger and an elephant one-on-one, the tiger ain't making it out of that.
yeah.
He's going to get just stomped to death, gored with. He's done. All right. It's not going to be a good time. So when you have this idea that like a woman say again, it's a very complicated algorithm to get a woman to be into you, and I don't pretend like I understand it completely.
No one does.
I'm like the guy who mashes buttons in a fighting game and sometimes does a combo. Like, how'd you do that? I don't know. Just hit some buttons, wiggle the joystick, and it happens. So, but again, when it's triggered, it's way more powerful. And
yes.
So when these Christian boys are told that women don't actually like sex and it's just something they put up with from you, and then they marry some girl that's not really into them, she doesn't really want to be your wife. She wants to be a mother, which is a common thing in the church, by the way.
Oh God,
a lot of women are looking to be moms, and you're a means to an end. You plant the seed and pay the bills. But the problem with that is, along comes the pool boy and he wakes the elephant up. This girl ain't never been told that this elephant's powerful. She doesn't have this thing chained down. She's got it on a little tiny string, like that's its leash. That ain't gonna hold.
That ain't gonna hold the elephant. Yeah, okay.
You know, whereas the man, I mean, we had to learn from a young age to come to grips.
Yeah, because if we didn't, we get locked up.
Yeah, because you know, when you're 12 years old, you can't go up to the teacher and say, "I want to see that ass." You know what I mean? It ain't gonna work. Ain't gonna get you. Well, maybe these days, maybe if you're in Florida or something. But
well, we get it.
You had to come to grips with it at a certain point, and probably before middle school, or you ended up at juvie.
Yeah, exactly. I mean? No, I'm having flashbacks now, that very uncomfortable memories of when I was wrestling.
Girls aren't told that, and they're certainly not told that in the church, and that's how you end up with a lot of these situations. Again, where
well, with what I'm seeing and I'm in the Pacific Northwest, what I'm seeing with a lot of girls who grew up in the church culture that I grew up in, a lot of them are single. And it's not necessarily because they're being feral or whatever it is. It's because they just see one. I think the problem is they see men as like perpetually adolescent, and they're especially with dads who are like, "Oh, boys only want one thing, and it's gross." Like they see the whole thing as gross. Sex is like something it's like paying the federal income tax. You have to do it. You don't want to do it. It's gross. It's intrusive.
You feel violated.
Yeah, you have to do it. And then,
TJ, can I stop you there? Nothing is more unattractive because, in full disclosure, everybody knows I'm not a Christian, but if a girl felt that way towards sex, my junk wouldn't work, literally.
And that's the thing. It's like it really determines. People tell me like, "Oh, why wasn't that girl interested?" Or why weren't you interested in that girl? It's like, dude, I'm not 21 or 16. Like I can tell when a girl sees sex as gross, and where she's only going to have sex when she wants to have a baby, and then the rest of it is going to be like anniversary sex.
Right, exactly. No, and
I'm sorry. Like I ain't signing up. First of all, I would rather go fight in the Somme in 1916 than go sign up for 70 years of and oh, by the way, if
It's your birthday. Yeah.
yeah, well, not even your birthday. It's our anniversary, and I really don't want to do this, but I have to because whatever. Like that's the problem.
No, it's really so fucked up though, because like you're like in good fucking shape. Like I know, I mean, you're in fucking tip top shape, and like if you're having challenges like in this area, it's like what hope to other guys in your?
Well, I'm gonna throw this out there. I don't even think it's physical. I think it's psychological. If you're not a broken man, broken women don't want to even go near you. They don't. They don't want to, especially if like for long-term stuff. They're looking for guys, particularly for in my area. They're looking for men that they can control. I'm not controllable. I've tamed the tiger, but I am also the tiger. I'm not tameable. They go after guys where those guys will do it. You'd be amazed at the bullshit that men here tolerate from their women who don't offer anything in return. It's just, it blows. It's like a a BDSM relationship in real life.
Honestly, I was going to say, like, I've literally dated dominatrixes before, and I'll see stuff in the church where I'm like, I dated a femdom before that would never speak to me like that in public.
Yeah. No, yeah, I totally believe you.
Because at least the BDSM thing, there's rules and there's fucking structure. It's like,
there's a safe word. There's a safe word.
Well, the thing is, there's boundaries where if they're being crossed, you point that out and they stop. Whereas, not that I would know from personal experience, but like,
well, I have dabbled in those black arts, and I can tell you that no, you will be respected as a man and a human being far more dating a fucking dom than your average Christian girl. It's a relationship, and you're not just there to pay the bills and plant the seed.
Yeah, no, I totally believe that. That's why I'm looking at.
I've noticed that in the church. These women, a lot of them, they want to be moms. That you are a means to an end. You're something that they grab so that they can have their, I mean, you could say they quote unquote want to be a trad housewife, but it's like in a very roundabout Faustian sense, I guess. Like, they want to stay at home and be the stay at home mom that can go to Chick-fil-A while their kids are at school and complain about their kids. Like,
well, that I don't, in and of itself, I mean, I don't have a problem with that, but like, just them like him wanting to be moms, as long as
they don't want to be
husbands for who they are.
They don't like men, and they don't like sex.
Yeah, they don't want to be wives. They want to be moms.
Yeah, exactly. That's the problem. Is like they see men, they don't trust men. I mean, they're dads. This is what. So I had to explain.
TJ, I just want to stop you there because you're touching on this thing about you're talking about the story about if a guy shows up and the father is like, "What are your intentions towards my daughter?" Like Becklove, could you tell that story about?
Oh God. Okay, so
a lot of people.
This is
Becklove had this story. Like it freaked me out when you told me this because I'm not sure if you embellished this or if this really happened.
This really happened. So
all right, go ahead.
It's early when I'm starting to actually like go to church, like take my faith seriously, and I've never fit in Christian culture. Like I'm probably mostly in line with evangelicals theologically. Like I'm not a literal creationist, and I don't have the Israel fetish they do. But other than that, I'm pretty much in line with them theologically. Politically and culturally, though, no, it's foreign, if not detestable to me a lot of times with this church culture stuff. Like I'm never going to have a Pure Flix account and watch Kirk Cameron movies. Never going to happen. And so early on, I'm sort of seeing this girl, and it's not even serious yet. I don't even know why I'm going to her house, and like, early 20s,
for dinner,
living at home. But I'm having dinner with her parents at her house. She still lives with her parents, And I shit you not, this father asked me during dinner conversation, which was kind of tense, but a lot of that is, again, I don't fit in with these people. he asked me if I'm a virgin.
In front of everybody at the table.
Now, part of this is skewed on by the fact that I kind of mentioned that I didn't grow up in the church, and a lot of it's foreign to me. And I made kind of an ice-breaking joke I had made before, where I'm like, as a kid, I spent my Sunday mornings watching Ren and Stimpy instead of going to church. That's what I did. It's reality. And the mom laughed, the daughter laughed. Well, he didn't laugh, and then a little bit later, he asked me this question, and I am just like, there's like a pause, and then I'm like, no, I can't say that I am. And then, no lie, exact words, care to elaborate?
I don't even know what that means.
I'm like, well, do you want the Dear Penthouse version? Like, what?
You want fucking video? What the fuck does that mean?
I stuck my dick in a vagina, pulled it out mostly, then back in. I wasn't really keeping track, but several times I didn't really keep count.
I didn't count the thrusts. What the fuck kind of question is that?
And I mean, it's like you don't. And by the way, motherfucker, you don't know what I held back, because I'm a dirty motherfucker that had a three-way before I was done high school. Okay. Like, this was the late 90s, early 2000s, the pre-9/11 fucking roaring peak America shit. It was just a constant party. Even a nerd like me could get pussy fell from the trees. All right. It was everywhere. Like, I could tell you stories if you want, but I don't think you want that.
Yeah, I don't want to do it over dinner.
Like, I'm like floored. I'm just, and in all fairness, the mother and daughter were both fucking floored. I was just like, oh,
that would have been so uncomfortable. I can't even imagine how awkward that would be.
It was unreal.
I mean, at first that he asked the question, but then when he said, "Do you care to elaborate?" I probably would have.
I think I just said something like, "Not really," but
wow,
not in mixed company. I mean,
yeah. What do you want? What do you want?
What am I going to give
you?
Can
I bang your daughter over the table and give a demonstration?
Yeah, you should have said, "Hey, Stacy, come over here. Let me show you what I did."
Yeah, let's do some reenactments.
Yeah, I mean, care to elaborate though? What the fuck?
No. I don't.
No, I don't. If I wanted to get into a porn career, I would have done something else. That is some really weird shit. And I guess, I'm not saying that he would be what's the word, an average example of the Christian
no, I mean,
community.
the only other time I really ran afoul of a dad, and so there was another time.
Oh, the black.
Yeah, I wasn't dating her, but I was kind of chatting up this black girl from like another church. It was like a sister church of ours, right? And like just chatting her up, and I end up after church, like we're just at a pizza place, and her dad and mom are there, right? And everybody, and I think there were some other people from the church. And what was funny about that was her dad, and now again, there's a black guy, her dad is I don't know how to describe this. This is like Peter Parker and Norman Osborn at Thanksgiving dinner. Like, he is giving me a look where I swear to God, I could almost hear his thoughts of like, the fuck you doing, white boy? Like, the fuck you think?
But he was never disrespectful.
He was never disrespectful to me. It was just, I swear to God, it's like I could hear him in my fucking brain. Just like fucking Professor X and me, like, who the fuck you think you're doing? Like, he was visibly not happy with this situation at all. And I mean, I don't really care. I again, it wasn't even dating. Like, I was just kind of like chatting this girl up a little bit. And
right. You weren't invested.
We're all getting lunch after church. You know what I mean? But it's like, if I'd had it, like, if this would have gone somewhere, it's just something you would have had to get used to.
You wouldn't have eaten a cannoli if this guy offered it.
See, I've never
Italian.
understood that meme or that trope where like the guy is afraid of his father-in-law. It's like, motherfucker, I'm railing your daughter. You should fear me. All right. Like, I've never, like, not since high school have I, said yes, sir, to a guy, to a father of a girl I was dating. It was more like, we're both adults here. I'm going to act like that.
Well, no, I will say this, like, even to this day, it doesn't, well, they're all usually dead because I'm so old, but I always didn't say sir, but I said mister.
I feel like a lot of dads,
Like, I wouldn't call them Jim or Bob. I would always say mister.
I feel like a lot of dads try to be kind of intimidating towards a guy that's dating their daughter, not even just to scare him, but to test him.
Yeah.
Like, I want to know that you're a man and stand up.
Yeah,
for
I want
yourself.
you got to give him a firm handshake, look him in the eye, and
I remember these old commercials for the Nintendo Wii back in the day, back when that was the current system, and it was like commercials around Christmas time where like the dad has his in-laws over, and it's a big family gathering, and everybody's playing the Nintendo, and he's trying to be like, "Come on, Dad, let's go caroling," and he's like, "I'm not your dad, call me Bill," and I'm just like looking at this commercial, like I'd be like, "Okay, Bill, get your hands off my Nintendo and get out of my house." Like, the fuck you think you're doing? It's my house. You're gonna talk to me like that at Christmas time?
Yeah, I mean, I do believe, it's not obviously not a Christian thing, but I do believe that you have to have some respect for, unless they give you a reason.
Yeah,
Otherwise,
I understand. I'm just saying, like, that
Yeah.
trope of like the father-in-law gives you constant shit. I'm like, at a certain point, I'd be like, you want to step outside?
Well, I mean, once you're married, I think not, but I think up until the time you give her your name, I think the father should give. I mean, this is just my 2 cents. I don't know where I'm getting it from, but until you give her your name, the father can give you shit. Once you give her your name, then he's got to step back.
I've said to one before who was giving me a little bit of shit. I said to him, like, look, I am, because at the time I was very serious with this girl. I'm like, look, I want to get along with you for her sake because that makes her happy and I care about that. Outside of that, I don't give a shit about you. And he kind of just was sort of cool with me after that. And I kind of feel like it was like that's what he wanted out of me. I kind of feel like he wanted me
he wanted to
stand up to him a little bit and be like, "Hey, what the fuck do you think you're doing?"
Or it could just be simply he was looking out for the
and that's the problem. Is like, especially in my area, guys have no idea what they're getting into with the father. Like, he could be, "Oh, I want you to stand up to me," or it could be, "Oh, like, you stand up to me, I think you're an abuser who's gonna hurt my daughter, hurt my children. I don't want any." You have no idea.
I understand that, but I think the way I put it in that case, I was making it clear, like, look, I want to get along with you for her sake because I want her to be happy, and that would make her happy. But like,
yeah, I think the East Coast, and the thing is, on the East Coast, I think that's more clearly defined, whereas on the West Coast, you just like there's a lot of guys who probably is the same way. Whereas,
yeah, maybe I'm too like is East Coast thing we're too traditional or something. I don't know.
Well, over on the West Coast, it's like my experience growing up here is like you stand up to the father. It's like you're starting a world war. But the thing is, you might not, and you don't know, and that's the problem. Is like it's kind of like somebody who's saying the house is on fire and we're all going to burn to death if we don't jump through the window, or the house is on fire and we got to jump through the window if we don't want to burn to death. One of us is making it up. One of us is not. And that's literally the way it is. Is like with fathers who are like, "Oh, yeah, no," like they come down hard on you and you got to push back. And then there's guys who are like, "Oh, you push back, you're an abuser. I don't want my daughter talking to you. You're a piece of shit." When they go cut, I have not dealt with that. I'm just disclosing.
I actually had to have words with my dad once because he did not approve of a girl I was dating. And
really, your dad? You got the coolest dad in the world.
He was giving me a little bit of shit about it one time, and I was like, "Fine, give me all the shit you want." But he got snippy with her one time, and I pulled him aside and I said, "Look, I love you beyond words. So know that if you talk to her like that again, I will punch you in the mouth."
No, you wouldn't have.
I was being serious. I'm like, you're not doing that again.
No, you wouldn't.
And
have
he
hit-
just
you
kind of
wouldn't
looked
have
at me and he was like, all right. And I mean, I was well into adulthood. You know, I'm not like, 16 and fuck you, dad, I'm turning my music up loud. You know, this was well into adulthood. And I'm like,
And
no,
I don't believe in
you're not-
Jesus anymore.
you're not doing that anymore. You're not going to do that again.
Right.
Okay, fine. And he understood. He was like, yeah, all right, fair enough.
Right.
Like,
But let me ask you this: was your dad's intuition right? Tell the truth.
No. Yes and no. That was not a good fit, but he was very wrong about the reason. And that's
All
all.
right. All right. Fair enough. Fair enough.
He might have had a spider sense going off, but he was dead wrong about what that red alert meant.
Oh, TJ, I got to tell you this. Beckloff, going to give Beckloff 10 seconds to explain Spidey sense. Beckloff, his thing about Spidey sense is like he doesn't necessarily believe in it, but how do you say it?
So
Don't
I've said
ignore
this
it.
numerous times. Like when you're watching somebody, we talk about like Doug Wilson and all, and I did this early on where like if there's somebody you watch on like
Matt, you got to use the link that I gave you.
If there's somebody like on some public figure you're watching, a lot of times
use the Streamlabs.
It really helps if you turn off the sound to
because we're all talking.
And watch their body language. You will. I call it. I jokingly call it the spider sense, but like your hindbrain.
Like Matt Chandler, like the faggoty pastor in Texas or whatever. Like he swishes his hips and he's got the whole.
There was a guy in the circle of like those guys like the Right Stuff and all that a couple years ago. 2015-ish. There was a guy
he was on the left. He was on the left.
No, I'm just pointing out there was this guy named Ghoul, which turned out to be a fitting name. And I remembered like I saw a video of his and I'm like, what the? And I got this, the spider sense buzzing and I muted it for a second. I really watched him and I just went like, that motherfucker ain't right. Like that's no, that's a whole bunch of nope. I want nothing to do with that guy. And that was right around the time where it was like ancillary to me. And I might've been able to get him to come on streams with me or something like that. And I was just like, nope. And then it was like a few months later, it turned out he was like fucking trannies and raping a 14-year-old boy or something like that.
Oh God.
But I was just like, nope. And again, it's just your instincts in the back of your head that are like, you could get away from that guy. Like your caveman in the back of your head's like, no, I don't like that.
Well, you said like don't treat it as hold on a second. I'm gonna add Matt here. You don't treat it as gospel, but
I'm
never ignore it.
I will never talk to a person because he buzzed my spot, but like I don't ignore it either. So I'm like, there's a lot of times where I'm like, I just kind of, I'm not turning my back on that guy. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Right.
There's a reason that it's there. Like you don't have to treat it as.
I caught on early on with James McDonald. I got basically thrown out of a church for calling out James McDonald because our church ended up affiliated with him through its like networks. And I'm like, no, that guy's pure fucking evil. And I was right. And I caught on with Mark Driscoll. Everyone liked the Paper Alpha shit. And I was just like, something with that guy ain't right.
Like, well, the thing is with Driscoll, like the thing I always held against Driscoll when I was, because his churches were in my area, like they were literally in my neighborhood. And the problem I had with him was like, at the time was every single church broadcasted his sermons. There was no church pastors. And when you met the pastors, when you met the pastors, it's like, every single one of them you could tell were lackeys. Like not one of them was assertive in their own sense. And so I really thought like, this is just a one-man show. And there was nothing else defining the churches. But yeah,
you should always, it's a very, and look, a lot of times, when you're dealing with YouTubers, people are new and they're nervous and they're socially awkward, whatever.
Right.
Like somebody who like does this for a living and has for a while, once in a while, turn the mute on and just look at them. Like Steven Crowder is a good example. Like I don't cover in the
Yeah.
slightest. I never trusted Gavin McAnus, and I was dead right on that one.
Well, no, hold on a second. You didn't need to turn the mute button on to know that there was something
No,
wrong with Gavin McAnus.
well before he's sticking butt plugs up. his
Yeah,
ass.
once he
No, I'm
stuck
gonna
a
say-
butt
I'm gonna
plug
say
up
something
his
like-
ass.
I know, John, you're not going to like this, but I'm just going to throw out Gavin is, along with Dan Carlin, like an example of this whole Gen Xer. Oh, we're above all this. We're independent thinkers. It's like, no, like at some point, you guys all caved. Like, I'm
My
not saying
favorite
you, but-
video by
No,
Gavin.
TJ, I got to give you 100% on that. I can't disagree with any of that. I think that he tried to pull this like, oh, we were punk rockers, like
Right.
like the typical Gen X. So we didn't give a shit. We were out.
Well,
we were
Gavin,
outside of it
it's
all.
like, it's easy for guys like Gavin to say, "Oh, we're for sex and rock and roll and doing drugs," and then they go up and they get married and have kids, and suddenly they're trying to.
And then they
adopt-
kiss. Then they tongue kiss. What's his name?
My
Yiannopoulos.
favorite video
Milo,
of Gavin
yeah.
McAnus
Or just
during
like they're
Gamergate.
trying to be edgy. It's like because that was their identity, and the identity in the 80s was footloose. It's like, oh, there's a bunch of theocrats in Utah who want to ban dancing. We're all the fun, cool, hip guys, and then they get to be older, and it doesn't make any sense anymore.
Yeah.
During Gamergate, Gavin did a video about like Gamergate is stupid because a man shouldn't be into video games or comic books or any of that. And literally, like 2 months later, he's shoving butt plugs up his ass and making out with Milo.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
Yeah.
speaking of things a real man should know,
No, it was funny.
I'm
like
sorry,
this-
Gavin. If I rolled up this Spider-Man comic and stuck it up my ass, would that have been more manly?
Yeah. No, it was actually the whole Gavin McGinnis thing. Like I thought that when Beckloff, this was like years ago, and Beckloff told me about this, and I thought he was joking. Like I didn't think it was real. And he's like, no, he did it on camera. And I thought when he said he did it on camera, like he meant on camera, like, but not showing his asshole. And then Chris is like, no, he showed his asshole with the fucking.
Well, he made out with Milo because that was to show the Muslims. He really showed.
No, I saw that kiss. He kissed
I mean, you could have had a ham sandwich and a beer.
Yeah.
That would have showed him too. I'm just saying, you didn't have to go right to make out with the dude.
A bacon and egg sandwich, man. That would have just done it right there. Just insult them with bacon and egg sandwich. They would have been the Muslims would have been offended. I mean, why the fuck did he have to fucking tongue kiss a guy and then shove a dildo up his asshole and film it? Which the part about filming it, I really don't
like how Steven Crowder always finds an excuse and a bit to dress like a woman. It's like this is some suspicious Bugs Bunny territory here. Where
I don't know. I don't think Steven Crowder's a fag. As I've seen his wife, so if he's gay, he's wow, because she was pretty hot. But
I don't know.
I mean, I don't look. I'm not invested one way or the other, but his wife is cute. So I don't know.
I think the term there is transvestite.
Like I said, I'm not invested in the
He likes
idea.
getting pegged by her.
Maybe I don't know. I'm not like
We need to bring that term back. Transvestite, a guy who just enjoys dressing up in women's clothing, like Ed Wood.
No, they haven't used that since the 80s. Now it's
Well, nowadays the little boy's not allowed to pick up a Barbie doll without them wanting to chop off his penis. Let alone.
Oh yeah, Matt, you missed the good shit. We were talking about fucking dick mutilations and all this kind of stuff. How it's become in vogue now, and how if a mother is against her son's dick being chopped off, she's a transphobe. So she.
You're saying I missed the soul destroying stuff?
Yeah, pretty much. Well, Matt, we know you don't have one, so
What a time to try and be a kid. It's like, oh, you picked Princess Peach in Mario Kart. Off with your penis.
Which is funny because Peach was always my favorite racer in Mario Kart because she had the balance of like.
Oh, they're coming for you now.
I know they're coming for me. Well, they want to come for me in my weight room. They're gonna get the shit kicked out of them. But I mean, other than that,
off with his penis.
Yeah. Well, the women might have some words, but that's an aside.
Yeah, women like TJ's penis, which is nothing wrong with that. Women should like a penis. Yeah. I mean, I'm assuming that if you're a heterosexual woman and you like a guy that's in good shape, you should like a penis. I mean,
Or if you're Gavin McCanus.
or Gavin McCann is. Yeah. If you're Gavin, hey, by the way, TJ, you're single. Gavin is no, he's married, but it's an open relationship, so maybe the two of. No, I'm just teasing. But yeah, it's kind of freaky. I do believe that this thing ultimately will backfire. I just have absolutely no idea how it's going to play out. I mean, we were kind of joking about the cars going off the cliff, but I do believe there will be this huge fallout because it seems like this idea of trying to some of them they're mutilating the kids, or just they're trying to create this.
Well, I mean, there's going to be a problem. I mean, here's the reality. Everything they do is designed to prevent reproduction of new life, of new human life. So we're kind of past like so many points of people want to go back to like the 70s. They're like, what about the free love movement? Well, these people, they were doing that at 1920, and then by 23 they were having kids. Like, just look at the median age of marriage. Like, I know I'm not trying to romanticize, or I know they got divorced later on because they're boomer retards, but like at the very least, they were having sex with people that they were interested in, they liked on some level, they were having kids. Whereas there's so many of these millennial Zoomer whatevers where they're just a bunch of retards when it comes to sex. Like the idea of sex for the purpose. I remember this was like 12 years ago. I was talking to this kid. He was, I think, like late high school, early college, and I was talking to him, and we were discussing dating and women and relationships, and I mentioned like the whole idea of like dating to find a wife, and the idea that you go and date and have like you go out and seek women out for the purpose of marriage and kids, to him was like explaining electricity to a caveman. Like, I'm not even, I am dead fucking serious. He could not process the idea of associating with a woman that he was sexually interested in for the purpose of marriage and kids. He could not do it. This was in like 2010.
One of the things I kind of feel like is going to be an interesting part of this backlash, and I don't know if it'll really go that far, but I feel like it has the potential to. There's a lot of like gay people out there that are starting to realize, like, okay, the T in this alphabet soup is really dragging us down.
Oh, you didn't hear about that?
Yeah, there's like the gays against groomers.
Yeah, they just got.
And
I'll be right back. No, there was a thing.
I'll never forget an older gay guy I worked with at one of these blue collar jobs that I kind of was. Just you these sort of blue collar jobs, you just chat with people, because it's mindless work. And he said once, because this is a guy that was in his 50s or 60s, you know what I mean? Which for a gay guy, that's like 100 in gay years. And so he said to me once, he goes, we used to have a subculture, and now it's just Funko Pops at Hot Topic, which I kind of identified with a little, oddly enough, being into nerd culture. I kind of felt you a little bit there on that one, but I feel like there's a lot of guys like in the 90s, gays had it perfect. They had a subculture, but they also, for, the man wasn't going to hassle them for it. They had just the perfect balance there,
Well, that was Jack Donovan's argument.
But yeah, I honestly feel like there's a lot of them that are starting to realize, okay, I've actually heard gays compare like the trans shit to like a sort of reverse version of like Christians that try and take you to like camp for conversion therapy. He said it's almost like the inverse of that, where it's like, oh, you're a boy that likes boys. Well, instead of praying the gay away, we're gonna mutilate your body till you're a girl. And I mean, it kind of, and again, we were talking earlier, like the sort of monkey's paw thing. Like these people end up in such a position where they don't even have a sex life anymore. So even that's gone. You know what I mean? Their hormones are fucked. They barely have the urge. They don't have, nobody wants to fucking axe wound except like a Cenobite. All right. Nobody wants a post-op transsexual. That's not a thing anybody wants It's disgusting.
Oh yeah, hold on
It's
a second.
good.
Talking about
It's Cenobite shit.
Chris, what was it? You made an argument about it would be better to fuck a guy than it would be to fuck a.
I would
No,
gun
you
to
said-
my head. I feel it's less degenerate to fuck a pre-op tranny than a post-op, because you're just fucking someone in the ass. Like, that's just sodomy, okay? But like, you're fucking an open wound if you're fucking a post-op. Like that, they didn't even write about that in the Bible because no one thought of it yet.
Here's the
That's
problem.
Cenobite shit. That's Hellraiser shit.
Well,
That's like,
I'm not gonna get. I'm gonna get dark. We're just gonna get dark for a second. So just everybody strap in their seatbelt.
We're already dark, TJ.
Yeah, I know. But we're just gonna get darker.
we have
What
such
happens
sights to show you.
Well, what what happens when all these trannies go to the church, or they're just in society, and a lot of the I'm seeing it already, where a lot of the women are more masculine than the men, and the men are very feminine or effeminate, whatever, and you cannot tell the difference. So from the church's perspective, it's like, how do we determine who is who? That's going to be a problem at some point if this doesn't turn around. Like, you're going to end up dealing with a lot of people who are, a lot of like, what are you going to do with people who are not women who have had double mastectomies, or men who've had their dicks chopped off? Like, what are you going to do with them when they go to the church?
Are they going to be in church though?
Yeah, a lot. I mean, you're already.
I mean, there's going to be some of them that are looking for redemption.
So let me just throw this out there. We're already seeing that now. It's not a physical amputation. It's a spiritual, moral, emotional amputation they've already gone through. That's why, like Beckloff said, you have men who have women talking to them in church in a way that a dominatrix would not talk to her submissive in another situation, where it's already there in a spiritual sense. It's just not there in a physical sense. So the groundwork has already been laid there. So what do you do? Like, and that's where, yeah.
You know what I think a lot of Christians need to get back into?
Witch burning?
You have a lot of quote unquote conservative Christians, well, perhaps, that they don't really value marriage. Again, like they skip, you get these women, they want to be moms, they don't want to be wives. Like, a marriage is a valuable thing in and of itself, and it must be seen that way. There's a lot of Christians that have families and they don't have marriages, even if on paper they do. Like, you need to be marrying someone for that person. This is your most important relationship outside of God himself.
Yeah, I'd say if
it needs to be like,
I would say outside of hold on. I would say outside of your children, but that's
I would even say your children, as important as that is.
We just differ on that.
I think in the concentric circles of your relationships, I think even more than your children, because in theory your children are there for a season and then they go do their own lives. But that's why you have a lot of like empty nest divorces.
Yes, I totally agree with.
Because once the kids are gone, what am I stuck with this?
Yeah, that's actually, that is true.
Like, this is a person that you're supposed to be. This is your
death to
your. I know partner sounds clinical or like the fags use it or something, but this is truly your partner. This is the one person you are more tied to than any other person. And it needs to be treated as something special. And I would actually say that while a lot of Christians should, you should probably wait maybe a year after you get married before you have kids. Because I feel like maybe you need to build that marriage up. I see a lot of Christians that are having like babies like 2 months into a marriage, and I'm like, don't you want to maybe enjoy that honeymoon stage with your spouse?
Well, I can I just speak to that, the waiting period. Like, I'm seeing that where I live, like in Seattle, and
I understand like a lot of people put kids off too long.
No, exactly. That's what I'm seeing now, is that
but at the same time, a lot of evangelicals are getting married at like 23, and then they're
okay. No, I'm not
really. There's Christian girls who are getting married at 23.
I see a lot of Christian girls, and I'm in a reasonably conservative area. But I see a lot of Christian girls where it's like they want to get married right away. And again, it's not because they want to be married; it's because they want to have kids.
Right?
They want to be
because in the Pacific Northwest, they don't want to get married. They want to go have a fur baby and have a career, and then when they're 34,
Well, that's a lot of.
Yeah.
Again, I'm in a much more conservative. area.
Yeah,
But
and that's
even there, it's like they don't value marriage.
well, and that's
They really don't. It's like this should be the most important relationship. It should, and then you build a family on top of that. But in some sense, when you got married, you should already see it as you've built a family, and the kids is you expanding that family.
Yeah, and that's the problem with today's kind of environment is like the people who actually take marriage vows and the concept of marriage seriously. It's like you kind of get pushed to the side, and the people who trivialize it are the ones who are rewarded with marriage. That's kind of my whole thought.
Expand on that. I don't expound on that. I should say. What do you mean by that? Are rewarded with marriage, and they don't.
Well,
I don't know.
Here. One of my problems with the whole red pill, movement, thought, books, all this stuff, they don't deal with the fact that like if you're a self-aware man or woman, you're going to repel men and women who don't have self-awareness. And what I mean by that is if you've actually thought through what it means to be a father or a mother, and you've thought about like all the different stuff that it takes, because most of them have a low level consciousness where like, yeah, we're going to get married and then we're going to go throw the kids into daycare and then we're going to go throw them into the public schools. And then, oh my God, why is Timmy wearing a dress? We have no idea. Let's not worry about it. And then at 21, why is he gay and chopping off his dick? Let's not worry about it. And then I want to get divorced. I'm just not having like that kind of level of lack of awareness. Whereas if you actually have awareness as a man or a woman, people can perceive that even if they don't have that awareness, and they're not going to date you. And I don't have a way of describing it because the people who lack self-awareness don't have the awareness to tell you, oh, I don't have self-awareness.
No, I don't disagree with you. I was just trying to find a.
There's a girl
that's a problem with all the red pill books and all the how do I get the girls? Well, are you trying to get them for one night or are you trying to get them for long term? Because if you're trying to get them for long term, that's a bigger problem. And frankly, the red pill doesn't want to deal with that because it's too depressing, and it's too much like saying, hey, how do I survive the first wave at D-Day at Omaha Beach? You're not. You're just not. Like
don't be on the first wave. That's how you survive it. Yeah.
Well, it's just like you're not. If you want to get married and have kids in our generation, you're going to have to meet certain metrics. And if you want to have an actual good marriage, a healthy marriage, a self-aware marriage, you're going to have to be in the 10% of people. And 90% of you, by definition, are not going to be in the 10%.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, just the law of
like
averages.
So much of faggoty Twitter is like, oh, let me teach all you 90%ers how you can be in the 10% if you just sign up for my Gumroad course or all this dumb stuff. I'm like,
oh yeah, that's why I can't sound like the. I mean, I know he's like a good friend of yours, like the Aaron Clary types and all those people who support him. Like
you need to sign up for Jack Murphy's course.
Jack, yeah. Oh yeah, Jack. The guy like takes up the ass.
Who are like, you can be in the top 10% if you just give me enough money. Whereas I'm like, look, if you are going to be in the top 10%, you're appealing automatically to a very small group of people. And it doesn't involve money, it involves so many other things. But that's the deal with marriage is like, if you want to have a good quality marriage, most of the time it's going to be very specific. And no, it's funny also the women like, and this is the problem with being like in our position, my position at least, where these women are also complaining. I'm like, honey, you are not going to get married either unless you make some major changes. You're not going to make those major changes because you have thousands of thirsty orbiters complimenting you and giving you dopamine hits.
Well, yeah, they have no excuse to make like the real hard decisions because they're getting the easy candy instead of eating the protein and the healthy food. But let me get Matt Forney in here. Matt, hold on a second. Matt, are you there? Unmute yourself, Matt. All right. Matt, I wanted to ask one thing that you had said a long time ago. You were talking about one of the things that they did in Ireland, and you were spot on about this, was about the way that families that had children, boys that were homosexuals, used to ship them off to the seminary. Could you expound on that?
I said that?
Yeah.
Well, I think they did that. Like I think that was common in the States too.
No, it wasn't.
That might explain some things.
No, it was extremely common. No,
Thir-
well, the reason
30
I know,
years ago.
and the reason I know, because actually Matt probably mentioned that in passing without realizing how profound that was, is because my mother and my father grew up in Ireland, and they talked about how the priest actually used to come into the schools, and they used to it's sadly they used to pick the best and the brightest, like grades wise. They would pick the smartest ones, and oh, you're the Jesuit, and of course they pick the smartest people so they can't breed and turn them into faggots. But also the mothers who had suspected that their kids were a little bit limp-wristed, they would encourage them to go into seminary because they didn't want the disgrace of a homosexual in their family.
Uh-huh.
And I thought, Matt, you were an authority on this.
No, I'm
Since-
not.
Since you know a lot about homosexuality, as we all know, but
Yeah. TJ mentioned not being self-aware. So a few years ago, I think I'm 30, I'm 39 now, but I was like 35, and I'm dating this girl from church that's like 25, right? And I had mentioned to her at one point, like she had mentioned, like, because we're talking about, what do you want out of life and that kind of stuff. And she like, do you want kids at some point? And I'm like, I don't really know if I do, and it's probably getting too late for me. I mean, like, I'm a man. I can father. I can impregnate a woman basically.
you can technically do it, but do you want? Yeah,
10 seconds after I'm dead if I time it right. You know
what
I mean?
Or 10 seconds after, actually. But,
but the point is, like, that's a lot different than raising a kid. That's a lot, So I'm like, and I mentioned to her that, if I got married, I mean, I'd want to spend at least a year with this woman building a solid marriage. Let's have some fun. Let's maybe travel. Let's, build a home.
Do some
I want,
sex.
fuck you on every surface that holds our weight. You know what I mean? Like, and then she'd kind of said to me something about, like, later, like, oh, she was gonna at 25, she's gonna go back to school for some stupid thing she wants to do. And then after that, she's going to find a husband and get a I'm like, sweetie, your biological clock's ticking a lot faster than mine. All right. Like, I could still have a kid basically right up until the end. It's just, I take, I worry about, can I really be there for them?
Yeah,
but you got a fucking shelf life but again, that's that lack, because nobody told her that. You know what I mean? Like, I'm telling her that, like, I'm the first person that's told her that. Like,
well, actually,
and again, reasonably smart girl, but nobody told her, like, no, if you want to go pursue some great career, that might be at the expense of having kids. Like, you can't have everything. I can't tell you what to pick in life, but there do come moments where you got to pick one or the other.
Yeah, no, what I was going to say was I had a conversation. This is about like 2 weeks ago, about there was an episode of a woman who came out, and she was talking about female fertility rates declining after the age of 27.
Oh God!
And she did not realize that this was a political.
No,
she
that's
was
the thing. It's crazy. It's like, I mentioned that to girls years ago, and it's like you punch them in the face.
Yeah, but this woman had like no idea like what she signed up for, and she was like on a talk show. This is like 17 years ago, and she was on like a talk show. And I remember you probably could find that clip on YouTube. And she had no idea that she was walking into the lion's den, and she was just citing statistics. She didn't make this shit up. This was just like statistics, and she was attacked as being this is a woman, an OBGYN, obstetrician, gynecologist, whatever. And she was just talking about, like, after 27, there's this huge drop, and then it kind of flatlines for a while. And then like after 35, then it really goes down precipitously. And everybody was attacking her for, saying women can't go after it. And she was like, what the fuck are you? I mean, she'd say, what the fuck? But she's like, I'm just citing statistics here. And everybody attacked her.
They tell women, and I mean, they to some extent they tell guys this, but they tell women, like, you can just have it all. Like, there's no trade-offs. There's no choices in life. You know what I mean? Like, a couple of years ago, Scarlett Johansson got pregnant. We were covering it on one of the streams, and
Oh yeah, you got mad because she got.
No, we got into a big topic about like women getting pregnant.
She made a contract.
That derails shows or movies that they're involved in. You know, I mean, how many shows over the years have had things derailed because one of the actresses got pregnant? And I mentioned like that should be like a contract that you can't do that. Same reason, you know, the guy can't show up to Captain America 4 looking all fat. Like your body's not yours.
Yeah, if I gain 100 pounds.
Yeah, you signed on for something. And I had people like even some trads push back about that. Like, well, children are important and family is important and she should be. I'm like, no. She should have to make fucking choices like everybody else does. Yeah. Okay. And maybe if you're the big movie star, you know, then.
Do you guys know how many shows? Yeah. How many shows like Scrubs and the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air are two shows I know where they made changes to the whole plot line because somebody in the show got pregnant.
Law and Order, Criminal Intent, Bones, Friends, Mad About You. Those are a couple shows right off the top of my head I can think of where they had to work around an actor.
Who got pregnant on Friends?
Fuck, I can't remember. Phoebe was the character's name.
Oh, the old one.
I think so, yeah.
But no. Somebody mentioned Star Trek Deep Space Nine in there. I happen to think that, when you sign on for these, you know, be it a movie series, a show, whatever, you're signed on, like you signed away yourself. And then people are like, well, what if they want to have kids? I'm like, well, too bad they made a choice. There's certain things in life where it's like, okay, you chose A and maybe that means you can't have B.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't tell you what, like, not everyone should have kids. That's not right for everybody. Some people want to pursue something else. That's fine. But at a certain point, you have to make a choice and live with it. And I don't think they tell enough people that, because guess what? A lot of people that have kids often think, oh man, what if I didn't have kids? What if I'd have chased the career? You know, everybody thinks
what about that
when you reach a certain age.
Chick,
what if I'd have done this instead?
The chick from Sex in the City, I don't know the actress's name. She was the nympho on Sex in the City. She played the blonde one.
Weren't they all
remember the TV series Sex in the City?
I mean, I remember the show. Weren't they all blonde?
Nah, one was a brunette. One had a redhead. She turned out to be a dyke. The other one was a Jew with a horse face. And then there was the blonde one.
Shock.
And she like said all this thing how she regretted she wasn't able to have a kid and this whole bit. And, you know, now she's all dried up inside. And she's,
I mean, the truth is a lot of people when they reach a certain age, they regret. That's just human nature. Okay. No matter how great your life is, odds are there's at least going to be part of you that thinks, man, what?
I'm pissed off like I wasn't in the NBA. I mean,
a lot of people aren't told that. A lot of people aren't told like when they're fucking 50 and they're like, oh, I wish I'd have done this. There's no one to come around and go, yeah, everybody does. Everybody wishes they'd have done the thing they didn't do. Like at a certain point, you gotta make choices and you gotta own them. And
I think that people who had lower expectations in life probably don't suffer from that, and that's where I've had huge debates and arguments with dumbasses on Twitter and social media, where I go, look, you know, if you're a person who didn't have a whole lot of expectations for life, you didn't expect to really amount to much or whatever, and you ended up doing so. Or you had a family where you had 5 kids and you had a huge extended family, like the Italian family and whatever. Like you've gone from low expectations to living the dream. Like that person doesn't suffer from much. But somebody who, I think that's part of also the problem is like somebody who knows later on in life, like if I had known more, this could have happened. And I've had to suffer from that in my own life. Like if I had known more about, you know, my own self, I could have gotten like sports scholarships to college or whatever. But like, I just didn't have anybody around me to tell me that kind of stuff. So it doesn't bother me too much, but like, yeah, that's one of the problems is like regret is a huge issue and there's nobody there to help you deal with it because frankly, I think a lot of our regrets in our generation, you and Matt and mine, are different from
not me because I'm a Gen Xer, but
yeah, you're Gen X, but you're not a boomer. We're not gonna hold that. Like boomers' regrets, I'm gonna be kind of harsh and just say it's their fault. It is their fault. Like they have no one to blame but themselves. on that level. I'm going to be.
No, they have the easiest generation in fucking human history.
Well, here's the thing that they had choice. They had the choice to do. They had grew up at a time when they could have done anything they wanted. Nobody was pressuring them to be anything other than they wanted to do. And then they're like, "Oh, I've got regrets." It's like, yeah, because you were given freedom and you chose to be a shitbag. Like, that's your choice. Whereas people, and especially with these Zoomers that are coming up now that we've been talking about, where they were not given a choice at all, they got to go through another hell of, if I'd been given a choice and I'd had somebody who wasn't like pressuring me to get my dick cut off at age 12, what would I have done differently? They got to live with that for the next 60 years or 80 years, whatever it is.
You know,
like,
we mentioned Scarlett Johansson earlier, and I remember when that Weinstein shit was hitting, and she started like whining.
Oh, you know, she sucked his dick.
Yeah, she started like,
I think she said she didn't do. She sucked his.
But here's the thing, like, you know, like a lot of these women that were complaining about, oh, he took advantage of me or whatever. It's like, no, he didn't. He said, hey, if you suck my dick or let me jerk off into a potted plant or whatever dumb shit he was doing.
No, he did do that. He actually did.
If you suck my dick, I'll make you a star. And it's like,
he did. He made them a star.
Scarlett Johansson did that, and then she got to be in the Avengers, and now she's richer than she could ever piss away that money. It's like, well, sweetie, he kept up his end of the bargain. Right now, you may regret that because you're not supposed to be a whore. But what you're feeling is guilt. It's not violation. He didn't violate you. Okay. Right. He kept his end of the bargain. This wasn't even a Faustian deal. Like, no, you sucked his dick, and now you're in movies despite not really having that great of an acting talent.
Right.
And there's a million redheads out there that could have been the fucking Black Widow. You happen to be the one because you sucked his dick. Good for you, I guess.
The one thing I will say though so I'm not a big fan of Matt, I don't know if he wants to chime in here, but he did follow that trial, so we know that there was a lot of irregularities in it, granted. But there were women that didn't consent that did get fucked over. So
I'm a lot more concerned about the Dan Snyders sucking 10-year-old girls' toes than I am.
How about that one dude, the Superman dude, the Brian, whatever? Like, I agree with Beckloff. Like, this, let's all just cut the bullshit. First of all, if you watch the new Batman adventures from the 90s, you know that there was a casting couch session stuff that went on because it was literally in an episode of Batman where like they were doing it as kind of a joke.
Oh, the animated series?
Yes, if you watch
I think they were talking about that in that baby doll.
By the way, I love the animated series, by the way.
Yeah, I think
if you watch the new adventures, there's an episode where it concerns like a former model of some kind or whatever, but there's a casting couch part where it's like done as a joke. It's not done as like, oh my God, can you believe they do this? It's like, no, we all know that. This is why, like, when this bullshit came out, I'm like, are you fucking serious? You guys act like this never went on. Like, how naive it's like pretending like sex doesn't go on in a brothel.
It's like, sweetie, you sucked his dick and now you're a millionaire. There are girls that suck dick to go to Arby's. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
okay,
and so,
like you got a pretty good deal. Okay.
Yeah, and so my response to all that kind of stuff is like, yeah, there's a difference between a person doing that where it's, I hate using the word consensual because I sound like a libertarian autistic spurg, but like I'm concerned mainly about the kids where they did not get to say, like the one 80s actor who was abused or whatever, like, you know, where there's kids who are not in a position to say no, or they're not.
That's
pedophilia. Yeah, that like that's the stuff where. But the thing is, like, that's where it starts, and then they get to the point. These pieces of shit in Hollywood. Can Putin just be like accidentally press a button that sends a nuke to Hollywood?
Think of how many times you had one of these like Disney Channel or Nickelodeon stars or some teen, you know, Britney Spears type, and then when they reach like
they're 19 all fucked up.
When they reach like 19 or 20, they go just insane. And we always used to excuse that as, oh, it's just, you know, it's an irresponsible young person with all this money and fame. But when I step back and think like, when I think of myself at 19, if I had millions of dollars in the bank account and the whole world was kissing my ass, I'd be a complete douche. Like I'd be parking my Lambo across 3 handicap spaces and come out with my middle fingers up. You know what I mean? Like suck my dick, do something about it. But I wouldn't go crazy. You know what I mean? I wouldn't like shave half my head and say and say I'm the lizard queen and attack someone with an umbrella. You know what I mean? There's a difference. There's a difference between this person went nuts with the fame and power and this person went legitimately.
No, actually, she was literally
nuts.
checked into a psychiatric facility in California.
And yeah, think about it. Britney Spears, Amanda Bynes, you go down the list of just spectacular meltdowns these people had. Fucking Lindsay Lohan. And I think it really is that they reach a certain point where they just can't stop the nom flashbacks of Dan Schneider sucking their toes.
Yeah, so, okay. Could you guys give me the cliff notes on this? Sorry, I'm a little bit ignorant on Dan Schneider.
So Dan Schneider was one of the
cliff notes.
Dan Schneider was one of the chief casting guys in charge of Nickelodeon shows. You know, all those like shows that'd be on there that are like sitcoms for kids and tweens. So he was in charge of casting this. And these shows for the longest time were notorious for having just absolute jailbait. You know what I mean? Like you'd see a clip of these shows and you'd be like, okay, I'm uncomfortable with how hot that 15-year-old is, but there was a reason for that. He casting couched the fuck out of this. And also Dan Schneider notoriously had a rampant foot fetish to the point where shows like iCarly and other shows like that were constantly showing these girls' feet for no reason. Just it's part of the gag or whatever. But just constantly like close.
That was part of his fetish.
Because he was big into feet. The man knew what he liked.
He liked little kids' feet.
He was like a pedophile version of Tarantino. He loved feet.
Okay. Okay.
Only instead of like, Tarantino just made a movie, about vampires where he gets to suck on Selma Hayek's toes. Dan Schneider's doing this to 10-year-old girls.
Yeah, but like Tarantino did it to adult women, right? Like,
yeah, Tarantino's just like, no, Selma, you have to put your foot in my mouth. It's part of the art. Okay,
yeah. And it was voluntary and they were over 21. So, yeah.
But yeah, Dan Schneider's still fucking employed by these companies. Nothing has happened to him.
Explain that. Someone kindly explain that to me.
Just nothing's happened. It's one of those things where it's like, we all know that Joe Biden raped his daughter. Like that's
we got the diary. Yeah.
Yeah, that's confirmed by the FBI. But like, the fuck is anybody gonna do about it? You know what I mean? Like, this isn't, to use an overused...
Well, no, I understand why Joe Biden is protected because he's the president.
Yeah, but
of the
like,
States,
it's the same thing at a smaller scale. Like, if nobody enforces, it's not the rules aren't magic. If nobody enforces them, they don't mean anything.
I think what I struggle with the most is the fact that the people who don't indulge in this stuff don't think it's okay, but they are absolutely morally paralyzed at the idea of actually doing something about it.
Well, from what you're telling me, because to be honest, like I had heard this story about the former Disney people being abused. I didn't know all the details of it, but I didn't know that the guy was still employed. I didn't know he was still walking around. I thought he had been dealt with. That's the part that kind of is spooky to me.
Yeah, but he's still out there and he's still doing it.
That's really.
And again, I'm not all that concerned when an adult woman, like, you made your choice. Okay. Like, yeah,
no, if a woman
you feel bad about it, and you probably should, but you made your choice.
Dude, I fuck girls, and after I did it, I felt bad about it. I'm like, after I busted my nut, I'm like, why did I do that? It's like, I felt bad.
You did something you shouldn't have. You felt bad. That's good. It's called guilt. You're supposed to feel that way.
Yeah,
I don't know what to tell you.
This is where I feel like a lot of the red pill movement is kind of completely morally defenseless against this kind of bullshit, because they don't ever say this, and this is part of what I find effeminate, is they don't say, like, here's boundaries. Like, even if a woman is willing to do this, I'm not going to do it. Or they draw a line where, like, if this is what it takes to be with this gal, I'm not going to do it. Their whole thing, and they don't ever say this, is like, whatever it takes to get with the gal I want to get with, I'm gonna do. Like I gotta go. We haven't gotten to this point yet, but like if they need to eat shit, they'd eat shit. And so we get to the point where they're dealing with kids or whatever. Like, what moral defense do they have? They don't. They really don't. And so this is where. Because they don't have any area where they're like, yeah, guys, like there's boundaries and you set them, but they don't do that.
Well, that's
Yeah, well, I would agree 100%. I think that a lot of these people, like in the quote unquote red pill, as it's kind of got a bastardized word now, but all these people that like talk about advice about women, it's like, dude, basically, like if you're a single guy and look, I'm a degenerate, so I'm totally okay with this because I'm not looking to get married and I'm just looking to have a good time. And, but I mean, anyone who's looking for a wife or a long-term commitment, if you're saying that there's a plethora of women out there that are like-minded, you're a moron. There's not.
Well, they're trying to weave two needles. They're trying to thread two needles at the same time. They're trying to avoid saying you're not going to get married, you're not going to have kids. What they really argue with is the idea that anybody who hasn't been brainwashed wants to get married and have kids. And I've noticed this with like so many people where first of all, every single one of these people have been divorced. And they've all admitted.
Yeah, it's like Rob Says, Bull Rush, Nick August, all these.
Well, I'm thinking
all your buddies, like they're all fucking divorced and they're giving advice on women. I'm like, oh my god.
Well, I'm thinking more of people I know in my own personal life where every single one of these people have been divorced, and they're all like, "Oh, well, the only reason you want to get married and reproduce is because you were brainwashed." I'm like, I'm pretty sure that goes against like biology. Like, let's throw religion out just for the sake of argument. Like,
for my sake,
yeah, for biological reasons. Like, no, I wasn't brainwashed into wanting to like have a family or whatever. And so
it's hindbrain hardwired.
Well,
yeah,
a lot of these guys are so autistic where they're so like they're so I don't know how else to put it. They're so like, first of all, all these manosphere guys are either some bitter divorcee or some young guy that's never been in love. You could just hear it in his voice, like you've never actually known what love is. And I can't describe it to you if you've never known it, because it's like describing color to a blind person. There's no words.
I totally agree.
Right.
So they reduce everything to instincts and to biology and to these machinations and shit like that. And it's like, look, you're giving out some advice that's like good general advice, but there's always exceptions. There's human beings are a lot more complicated than that. Human beings are animals, yes, but we're not just animals. And there's more to us than that. And you reduce things down to like these machinations where it's like, even if that shit works, I don't want to live like that. Never mind even having a family and all. It's like, I don't want things to be. Have you ever seen how like Roosh, even in his heyday, describes sex? It's like Lieutenant Commander Data describing it. It's the most cold, cynical, sterile thing, unsexy thing you've ever read. And then now he's doing the same thing to Faith, oddly enough.
Yeah.
But
what's funny is, and I'm not revealing anything that nobody's ever said in public, but I've got guys who've had sex with at least 40 women, if not more. They have no problem with women, and they turn around and tell me in public and private, like, I'm not better off for this. And my whole thought is like, yeah, exactly. Like my whole response to this with guys who are like, oh, nobody wants to get married. That's just, you're just brainwashed by the church or by your parents or by your family or by society. I'm like, really? We just showed up out of the fucking universe out of nowhere? Like, how do we get to this point in our history if nobody wanted to have a family? Like,
they think you're brainwashed because, again, everything is instinct with them. Well, you would just have an instinct in you, an animalistic instinct to breed.
Well, and that's what
it's like,
like,
I guess I do, but some people also legitimately want the love and warmth of a family.
Well, can I say something else?
Well, and this is why you see a lot of these guys ankle biting other people online for better or for worse, because they're what they're doing in their own personal lives is not. First of all, if I was doing exactly if I was living the ideal life that I wanted to live, I probably would not be online a whole lot. I'm not saying I wouldn't be on this live stream, but I would not be on social media a whole lot because I'd be too busy with my family or my kids or whatever stuff. A lot of people are online now, and I don't judge them. I sympathize with them. Even the women, like, they're trying to figure out shit that their parents either don't care about or they just don't know how to deal with. And I'm even for the innocent boomers. We won't push the pillow too hard on their face when we go to kill them, right?
A little bit hard, but not too hard.
But like, even with some of the boomers, like, they just don't know what to do because society's changed so much. So a lot of their kids or their grandkids go online to figure out stuff. And I understand that, but like, that's kind of my point is this whole situation is they're acting like this is the norm. This is how it's always been throughout society. This is how it's always been, and it's never been. It's like, no, we're in a brave new world. This is completely different. And they'll say, well, nothing's new under the sun. Okay, great. Go look at the birth rates, or go look at like society or the median age of marriage. In 1982 or 3, men and women were getting married at like 21 and 22. Like, don't tell me that nothing's changed. Just shut the fuck up. Just shut.
I have talked to a lot of like younger millennials, and it's weird. I'm an old millennial. I'm 83, so I'm right at that kind of Gen X line. So I feel a little Gen X at times, you know. And I was a teenager. I was a teenager in the late 90s, like that pre 9/11, just peak America. Everything was a fucking party,
right?
And
in fairness, Beckloff, it was.
Oh yeah, it was.
Oh
great.
yeah,
I gotta butt in here because I gotta tell you, in the 90s, like I think Chris, I had this conversation with you. Is like when it came to getting laid, it was like, you know, the joke about like, you know, shooting fish in a barrel. It was like the fish were jumping into the barrel.
Dude, there was that movie called 40 Days and 40 Nights with Josh Hartnett or whatever his name was. Like, it's literally a film about a guy who's trying to not get laid for 40 days.
I literally, I mean, I joke, like, I was a dorky, awkward chud, and I managed to wrangle up a 3-way before I was done high school.
Yeah, dude.
People ask me,
dude, it was like that.
And people ask me how, and I say, I asked. Like, I don't know how. I asked. You know, my girlfriend at the time, I was like, hey, you know, you cute little blonde friend, you want to bring her, you know? And
no, it used to be like, I swear to God, in the 90s, I remember like going to New York, and at the time in New York, it was like in the mid late 90s, and like the ratio of men to women was so skewed in favor. I mean, there was like way more women than men. I remember going there with a buddy of mine. I was visiting because I live in Seattle, and we were just hanging out with a buddy of mine that I was, you know, I just was meeting there that I knew from New York, and we were just hanging out, and I'll never forget this. And like 4 women came up to the 2 of us and like chatted us up. And I won't get into all the, you know, gory details, but I mean, it was like we did 0 work to get laid. I mean, we didn't have to do anything other than
yeah. I talk to these millennials and these Zoomers, and they'll talk about how difficult it is. And some of it's on them. Don't get me wrong. I mean, the men and women of a generation deserve each other almost always. So, you know, go work out, go be able to talk to a girl about something,
bro. Yeah.
You know, something other than anime and fucking esoteric far right politics. You know, go do those things. But I also understand it isn't like what I came of age in. I get that, and I don't know what to tell you because
well, that's what pisses me off when I see like guys.
That's why I don't want to be the boomer that just tells you like, oh,
no,
just do what I did.
No, but when you see like these guys who like charge money of these desperate men who are really like
sincerely, well, they're Gen Xers that are trying to like explain to millennials and Zoomers.
Yeah, like you got these guys like these pieces of shit. Like you got like Ryan Stone, Rollo Tomas. Like, I mean, these guys are. I mean, Rollo. Have you seen his fucking wife? I mean, Jesus Christ, TJ. All due respect, you're a good-looking guy. but I would fuck you before I would fuck her, and you're ugly. At least
Yeah.
to me. I mean, if you're a woman, I would feel differently.
Well,
But-
this goes back to what I'd say about like with at least with women, like if you're a man and you're not psychologically broken, I don't care how hot she is and I don't care how hot you are, you're gonna push them away and they're just not gonna be interested in you because and this is where because here's the problem, and it's not like this is the problem with the whole red pill movement telling guys like, oh well, this is how you get the girls. There's a lot of hot women out there that are just batshit insane. You avoid them like you avoid the Black Death. You got to stay away from them.
And don't stick your dick in crazy, yeah.
Well, yeah, and here's the thing that this is the problem with the red pill like philosophy and the red pill movement and all this stuff is it doesn't fit within a binary that men understand. Like there's gonna be girls out there that are, and I'm not saying I've met them necessarily, but like there's some girls out there who are gonna be not the greatest looking, they're not the greatest in bed, but they would make a long-term good partner. They're nice or whatever, and people will say, well, they're nice because they're not attractive. Like, okay,
well, part of that is true.
That part of that is true. They've realized that they have to be.
Yeah, you got to suck. If you're not really attractive, you got to learn how to suck good dick. You know? I'm not trying to be facetious.
I'm thinking more. Yeah, I'm thinking more of like they have to work on their person skills. They have to be like there's a couple of girls I knew years ago who were very charming. They were very sociable. They were very like you loved being around them. They just weren't the greatest looking at the time. Not like if we were to go into the year 2020 and compare them, like holy shit, they were in good shape. But at the time, this was 20 years. We're talking.
Yeah, they didn't have one side of their head shaved and the other side painted blue.
Yeah.
And
yeah. Like the difference in like female weight was totally different. But like my whole thought is saying like with women, they're talking about how to get girls in a short-term sense as opposed to a long-term sense. And the problem is you can't manipulate, in my opinion, and people can write me off, whatever. I don't care. Like I'm just
fuck them. Just say what you got to say.
Yeah, well, I'm just saying, like you can't manipulate women into a long-term relationship. If you're gonna have a genuine, sincere relationship with a woman in the long term, it's got to be sincere. It's got to be based on truths, even if it's not spoken outwardly. Like if you like her or whatever it is. But the problem with a lot of these guys is they're trying to give advice that's based off of when they were dating or when they were getting married, which was a long time ago. It's not based on the year 2020. I guess is my point.
No, absolutely. And and other the ridiculous things is like people are literally saying that the things that make women, Matt Forney actually came up with this quote. He said, "Women with graffiti are like excuse me, women with tattoos are like buildings with graffiti." And
yeah. Well, the problem is in the Pacific Northwest. Like, I'm not joking. I am genuinely serious. I've been in situations where every single woman in the room has a tattoo, and here's the thing. I'm not opposed to like having a rational discussion about that. I have a problem with guys who say, "Well, if you got a problem with that, then you're the problem." Like automatically,
the morals of it aside, you're allowed to have preferences,
right? And they're saying,
I don't know why we
back off. Here's the problem. They're saying, "How dare you have preferences? Let me tell you what you're allowed to agree with and what you can't like. You need to like this because the women like it and the women own you." Like they don't say this, but this is kind of the attitude that a lot of guys say is like the women own you. Whatever the women say they are going to do, you have to comply if you want them. They are the Ark of the Covenant, they're the Holy Grail, they are the Alpha and Omega, they are the beginning and the end, they are the Messiah. You have to do whatever they say they want you to.
I mean,
in fairness,
to like knowing yourself. You gotta know what you're willing to bend on, what you're willing to not. I mean,
Right.
you know, you gotta have certain things where it's like, no, I'm not. We're not talking about that.
Right.
You
But
know,
for a lot of
I'm a
guys,
big old
like,
nerd, and the amount of women I've dated over the years that have tried to be like, you know, oh, you should stop liking that stuff. You shouldn't read comic books anymore. And it's like, bitch, I like comic books. Comic books been making me happy long before I knew you. All right.
well,
And
that's
they
like,
will, and at the rate you're going, they're going to be making me happy long after you're gone. So,
well, and this
like,
goes back to a huge fight that I think is relevant within the whole whatever sphere people want to talk about is what does a man do? Does he do what makes him happy, or does he do what makes the woman he wants happy? And the problem is that in so many cases, a lot of guys
You're making it binary there, unless you're going to go somewhere else with this.
well, but the point is, like, for a lot of guys, that's how they think, is like what they like is what women like in a man, so they don't understand the nuance. Like, there's nothing outside of that they've ever had to deal with. Whereas guys like Beckloff and myself, and I'm assuming you, John, like, where we like something and the women will say,
No, I'm a total beta. I do whatever the girl wants.
well, they say, like, hey, I don't like that. I'm like, that's nice. Like, if it means I'm alone, so be it. But if you like it, that's great. As opposed to a guy who's like, I know in advance it's what you like. I'm going to pretend like it's not what you like. And then we're going to do this whole manipulation game. And then I'm going to get laid.
Well, that's, to be honest, that's how I live my life, because that's where I
Right.
always pick up chicks at AA meetings.
I mean, I'm the kind of guy, like, look, I have mommy issues out the ass, so I don't mind a kind of bossy girl, you know, and it can be rather fun for me, if you know what I'm saying. That
Yeah.
said, though,
You're like a redhead,
certain
you'll do
things-
fine.
there's certain things where it's like if I'm dating a girl, she's like, oh, you should grow your hair out longer. I'm like, fine, you got to look at me. That's fine, whatever. I don't care. If it's like certain things where it's like, I don't think you should watch a show you really like. Well, you don't have to watch it with me. Like, no, there's certain things. No, we're not.
Very redhead.
Well, I've mostly.
Well, also, have you guys ever heard the theory?
I'm just saying, like,
TJ, have you ever heard the theory that the older you get, the more preferences you have, and that's a sign of maturity? So, preferences are the sign of maturity, like, because it means you are more aware of who you are, and that's what
You're also
preferences
like less
are.
insecure about it. Like, you know, I bring up like liking comic books, and that was something maybe in high school I was insecure.
You should have been ashamed about it in high school, because if you were,
no, I'm like,
if you like, no, hold on, Chris, just let me finish my point and I'll let you go. If, like, you were in my high school and you like comic books, and, like, for whatever reason I had a reason not to like, I probably would have loved you, but just hypothetically I didn't like you, I would have stuffed you in a locker because I had an excuse, because you like comic books. But you know, I mean, but as you get older and then you become more mature and you say, no, I do like comic books, and go fuck yourself. That's fine, because your identity of who you are as you age becomes more defined, and what you will put up with and what you will not put up with becomes
yeah,
clearer.
I was fortunate enough that my best friend was the crazy fucking Indian dude on the football team that just was quite the fucking scrapper.
Yeah, but see, the problem with that was I was that, like, psycho fucking 6-foot Irish guy, so it wouldn't have worked out too well. So,
Oh my god!
because he would have died, or I would, and if I lived, you'd be next.
But no,
anyway.
that's the point though. Like, you get over that shit, and then it's like girls trying to be like, oh, you shouldn't be. And the other thing is, a lot of girls.
No, exactly. No, I 100% agree.
A lot of girls will play this
your,
fucking
no,
game.
no. What your point
where-
is like, I agree 100%. Is that you have preferences? Like, in your case, it's comic books.
No, a lot of what I'm saying. A lot of girls will play this game too, where when they're into you, all your traits are awesome, and if they're weird, they're actually just quirky.
yes,
And
yeah,
and then once they're not into you, then it's all bullshit.
yeah.
Like, no matter what it is, it's like, you like comic books? Oh, that's so cool. It's so nice to talk to a guy who doesn't just obsess about the Philadelphia Eagles.
Hold on a second. We
You know?
got
And then
another
it's
person
like-
joining us here.
And then it's like, oh, I'm not into you anymore. You fucking man.
No, this is the problem with, and it's a struggle that I dealt with and a lot of guys deal with, where they're thinking like, how is she going to think about my
Really was
personal
delayed because-
whatever? But then she likes you, and suddenly like
because-
your obsession with World War II is her obsession. Or I knew a girl who was not big into guns, but then she ended up marrying a guy who was big into guns, and suddenly she was buying guns and obsessing with like the caliber of her pistol. It's like they just don't. They don't. Women are like water. They fill. They become the form of whatever pitcher they're poured into. And the thing is that's it's a huge struggle with guys because we aren't like that, and we're not raised to think like that, and we're not taught to think that way. But that's how women are. It's one of the big struggles with guys. On top of everything that's going on in our society, is just realizing like you're gonna have to, if you want a certain type of girl, you're gonna have to find a girl who's willing to become that and mold her into that, as opposed to find a girl who's like that, because no man out there is gonna, no father out there is gonna mold her to that. And I'm not saying it's easy. It's gonna be one of the biggest difficulties of your life. So,
well, hold on, guys. I'm gonna wrap it up, but I want to give people some closing thoughts. You guys can hang on afterwards. I'll stay online afterwards, but I got to wrap up the stream for YouTube purposes. I got a question for TJ. I was dating a girl years ago, like literally a 2-year monogamous relationship. And I like to play chess, not as much as I used to, but I did. And she was huge into it. Like she actually knew how to play chess. She was the only girl I ever dated that
Russian.
I didn't know. I didn't have to teach her how to play. She actually knew. And like, that sounds weird, but that was a turn on, like not a sexual turn on, but like it was an attraction thing. Like she knew where all the pieces moved, and she knew to do en passant and all that kind of thing, you know. But my point is that I'm guessing that like after, she broke up and she was engaged like 4 months after we broke up to some guy, and he didn't even know what the difference between a queen and a rook is. So that's kind of a classic example of like what you were talking about.
Yeah.
I would like to give Matt Forney a chance because he's been like really, really quiet. Matt, have you unmuted yourself? You fucking bald-headed fuck. Are you still there? Matt. Okay, he's jerking off. Chris.
Well, I've been doing it the whole time.
Yeah.
Why my camera's not on?
Yeah. Well, by the way, you got to give us the 10-second version of who the fuck was it that did that with the camera on?
Oh, DSP.
Oh DSP, yeah. So what was this guy? I don't know who the fuck DSP is.
Gaming streamer, but like he was getting ready to stream, and like he had like 10 minutes before or after or whatever, and he fires up some porn, and you can't really see his dick or anything, but you could see like his hand doing kind of the motion, and then at the end you see him just sort of throw his head back for a second, and then he kind of is like, oh, camera's on.
Yeah, well, what's that song? I bite my lip and close my eyes, take me away to paradise, kind of a thing. Yeah, he was.
I mean, DSP's kind of an asshole, but I kind of felt bad for him for that. It's like, hey, you gotta get the poison out.
Yeah, well, everybody does it, but usually we don't do it with the camera on. But unless you have an OnlyFans account. TJ, I will say that I love you, brother, but some of your associates I really don't care for, and actually they shit talked you on Bull Rush's last stream.
Oh, what a terrible thing!
So, and I'm sure you're gonna slit your wrists over it.
Well,
I'm sure I will lose sleep over it.
If you're looking to be a real alpha, you should sign up for the Ligma Order with Jack Murphy.
Yeah. Oh, by the way, is he still around? Does that still exist? By the way,
he's not only still around. I discovered something recently, and I don't know how this happened. I don't remember, but I'm apparently friends with him on Facebook.
How do you?
I don't remember ever.
You would have to accept the friendship.
I mean, you know what? Now that I think about it, I think that one girl I was banging, I think I heard Jack crying in the closet. So that might have been it.
Oh.
I kept wondering what that noise in the closet was.
Yeah, he's so alpha. He sends his wife or girlfriend out to be railed by people on Craigslist. That's the ultimate Luma Sigma
See, he gets their
alpha.
masculine power after he eats their load out of him.
Yeah, and
He's
to be honest, that's some creepy shit. But
he's eaten so many, he's almost unstoppable now. He can take bullets.
That's some shit. Could you imagine motherfuckers paying this guy money for advice on women, and he basically is prostituting out his fiance?
You know what? I'm now of the. And by the way, I have a boss at work that has a Jack Murphy beard, and I can't. I snicker every time I see him, and I know I'm gonna. At one point, he's gonna. Like,
Dude, I have a goatee. Does that make me a Jack Murphy
no,
beard?
he has a Jack Murphy beard. You're like, remember how everyone was photoshopping that beard onto people? Like it's a joke, like, oh, you're a cuck. My boss at work has a Jack Murphy beard.
Jack Murphy beard. Oh.
I have to not laugh when I see it because it's like, how could I possibly? First of all, it takes like 10 minutes to explain it to him, then he'd get mad, But
yeah, that's a long backstory there, like the whole Jack Murphy thing.
Oh my god! But I don't trust anyone that's got like overly manicured facial hair anymore.
Well, I don't trust anyone who like hires people to
Gavin
fuck their
McInnes
wife.
And how he had like the Snadley Whiplash mustache, like all the mustache wax, like he's gonna tie a lady to the train tracks or something.
Well, actually, you know what did it? I was suspicious of Gavin McInnes, as you call him, way back when, before this incident he had with the dildo, because he was always talking about back in his day that he was banging all these girls, right? And he was saying like he was like a punk rocker and everything. And then he looked at his wife, who was empirically extremely unattractive. And I said, well, I cannot respect a guy that if he was getting so much pussy, that would be what he settled for. That's just me. But, that
maybe she was just really good in the sack, man. Did you think of that one?
She sucked a mean dick, John.
Maybe she has a really good casserole recipe.
Honestly, John, you should like the last.
That's why you marry a woman. She's got a good casserole recipe.
The last time she sucked mine while Gavin watched, it was.
well, actually, Chris, when he watched, did he have the dildo in his ass while he was watching?
He was sitting on one that was molded to be like Milo's.
Oh, Jesus Christ. That was, I mean, his wife is extremely unattractive. And I was like, I cannot respect a guy that's what he chose to breed with, who is, and I mean, there's a reason, like one of the reasons that people respected Donald Trump was because his wife was fucking hot.
Yeah.
There's something to be said about like, dude, that's what you got.
You ever see, remember Dennis Kucinich?
Yeah, I remember him.
Shit. So yeah, whatever. Is he still alive?
I don't know, but he was this little guy in Congress. A lot of people.
Yeah, and he had this like.
They used to call him the left-wing Ron Paul because he was a pretty principled guy.
Yeah.
And
I forgot about him.
He was a short little fucking gremlin of a dude.
He was ugly motherfucker. Yeah.
He was banging. He was married to this fucking 6-foot tall redhead he found on.
Yeah, your wet dream, Chris.
He found this bitch on Wonder Woman's island. This was an Amazon, all right. And he's just every time he's photographed with her, he's got this smile on his face, like he knows what you're thinking. He's like, yeah, that's right.
And I remember they were talking about her because she had his tongue piercing, and I remember like they were trying to like shit post her, like she was being interviewed on like MSNBC, and like, you got a tongue piercing, and she's like, yeah, I do. Like, what's your problem with it? And she was, she was using that to massage his fucking ball sack.
God damn, good for him, man. Like,
yeah, no, I got to give him credit for that. I don't know what happened to the guy. He totally disappeared.
He was on. I often disagree with him, but he was one of the few politicians.
Isn't he like on Fox News or something?
Yeah, he was on Fox News with Viggo Mortensen, who supported his campaign back during one presidential election.
Back though.
Yeah, that was a long time ago. But I remember Viggo Mortensen kind of like he was with Sean Hannity, but he was saying like how he appreciated how Fox News would not would allow them to actually talk about this stuff, whereas a lot of the other mainstream media would not do that. They would not
Yeah.
allow him to talk about stuff. I think this was in 2004 or 2008 or whatever it was. It was years ago. I just remember Viggo Mortensen was with him, kind of the same way Mike Huckabee.
You talking about the actor?
Mike Huckabee was with Chuck
You
Norris.
said Viggo Mortensen. That's the actor from Lord of the Rings.
Yeah. And Viggo Mortensen actually kind of talked a little bit more than him, just saying like how he didn't necessarily like Fox News, but he appreciated the fact that they were allowing him to come on and talk about his views. Whereas other shows, other TV shows or news shows would not allow him to talk.
I tell you what, if I was married to that woman, every time you'd see me, I'd look tired and dehydrated.
Dude, you wouldn't be able to get out of bed.
I'd be like, they'd be interviewing me, and just my tie would be undone, and just my hair all messed up and stuff. And like, I'm sorry, man. Like, why are you out of breath? It's like, it's fine, just give me a minute. You're just drinking a Gatorade.
No, you wouldn't have a Gatorade. You'd have an IV infusion. But one of the things I wanted to say about the Fox News thing was that they would allow how would you say it, like everybody, I mean, they are a corporate media, but at the same time they would allow opposing viewpoints on it. Like, are you familiar with a guy named Mike Rowe? He was famous for doing the television show Dirty Jobs.
Yeah.
Everybody know about it? Anyway, it was really sad. Like, he was on I'm trying to remember the name. It was on MSNBC. It was on I can't remember the name of the show. Some fat fuck on MSNBC. And he was trying to make an argument that, like, not everybody needs to go to college, that you can make a great job as an electrician, a welder, or, you know, in the trades, you know. And this guy didn't want to hear it. He was like, oh, no, everybody should go to college and get a degree in interpretive feminist stance and the whole bit. And it was, you know, he was really like kind of broken up about it. And, he went on Fox and they actually heard him out. And this guy was, at the time, I think now he's pretty, at the time he was kind of politically agnostic. Now I think he's pretty right wing, just because like, what was it? Elon Musk.
It's like having, it's kind of like having, the example I give, or the analogy I give, is like having a Windows 95 in 2000 and you're in the year 2020. Like, if you haven't updated your computer or your software, you're out of date as far as the left is concerned. So if you're a left-wing guy from like 2000 or 1995, you're automatically right-wing. Like, it doesn't matter. Like, your opinion doesn't matter as far as like your sincerity or your authenticity. You are right-wing. Because what was it? Barack Obama was against gay marriage in 2008.
That's right. That's right.
So like,
so was Hillary Clinton, by the way.
Yeah. And so it's like, or she said like she was, whatever it was, but like the whole point is to be on the left today, you have to have constantly updated your views. So if you're a liberal from like 1991, and you did not change your views at all, automatically you are far right.
You're a fucking Nazi.
Yeah, exactly. You're a fascist in today's world. Just automatically a fascist. So, I always describe Donald Trump with, it's funny how girls over here are like, what do you think of Donald Trump? I don't support left-wing Democrats from New York. And they're like, you'd be surprised how well that works, where they're like, they're not.
They must be like, error, like that.
Well, no, it's funny. They're like, well, what do you mean? I'm going to go, well, he's from New York, right? They go, yeah. And I'm like, he's a Democrat, right?
Lifelong Democrat.
He was a Democrat, right? And they go, yeah. And I'm like, great. He never updated his views. Like, you should update your windows. And then they start giggling and like, then the night carries on. But like that's the reality. Is like I once, and then they go, well, you're conservative. I'm like, I'm not conservative. And they're like, why not? And because I like to win. Like, it's just amazing how like even the girls, the women, at least the single women, are like, they understand when.
Well, ultimately they're attracted to the confidence and the power of that. But hold on, TJ. I had a girl.
Hold
on, guys. Hold on. And this broadcast, we're going to keep going on like in the after-hour session. But everybody, thank you for tuning in, and like, comment, and subscribe.